Well, hi everyone, it's Pete here in the UK, very early morning UK, and with my good buddy over there in British Columbia, Keith Meldrum. Good morning, or good evening to you, Keith.
Good early morning to you, Pete.
Hey, listen, welcome to the second Worldwide Self-Management or Pain Self-Management Conference. It's a unique event because, to our knowledge, this is the only worldwide conference that does or concentrates on pain self-management. So just give a little bit of a rundown on how it's going to work today. Is the format is that webinar or this meeting will be about 3.5 hours long. It's also recorded, so if you've registered, don't worry. Once it's finished, and I'll upload it to get that or sort of download it, I should say. I'll then send it out to everybody who's registered. As I say, it's unique because it's not only it's about self-management, but there's a mixture of presenters. So, like our first speaker, Peter Stilwell, and his wife Christy. There, Chrissy. Sorry, Christy. Oh, I've got it wrong already, but I can't remember anyway. Um, so healthcare professionals are involved, as well as self-managers like myself, Keith, and other people like Mary Wing, who's going to be on later on, and Katherine, who are self-managers as well. So it's a unique type of conference. So today, so we've got our first speaker will be Peter and his wife. I've forgotten already. This getting old business is killing me. But anyway, they'll introduce themselves in a minute. Then we've got Rajam Roose from US, the United States. Then we've got Susan Reid-Schellinck from Canada. Dr. Hem over there in New Zealand. Katherine Brain from Australia. And last but not least, Mary Wing, good buddies of ours. So how does it work? It's quite simple, really. Each speaker will be presenting for 20 minutes, and then we'll allow 10 minutes for questions. So if you've got any questions at all, put them in the chat. And Gronya, who's a physiotherapist, who's a good buddy of mine and works with the Pain Toolkit, she'll be collating the questions. And so after their presentation, she'll be saying, "Oh, Fred from so and so, this has asked this. Can you answer the question?" And we've got Dave in the background. Dave Oxley, he's a good buddy of ours as well. He's another self-manager like me and myself and Keith and others, and he's doing all the tech stuff. So thanks very much, Dave, for being online again, and for getting up early in the morning. So, and in between each speaker, it will have a pacing break, like 2 or 3 minute pacing break. So allow you to get up and move around, because that's part of self-management. It's not to sit for too long, not to stand for too long, and in fact, not doing an activity for too long. And we'll just have a 2 minute break to get up and move around if you want to. Okay. So that's my little bit out of the way for the time being. I'm going to hand over to you, Keith.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that, Pete. And we're just going to jump right into this so everybody can see on their screen. We've got our first presenters. It's Peter and Kirsty Stilwell. They're coming to us from Canada. I'm on the West Coast in British Columbia. They're way over in New Brunswick, so a few hours apart from us. Really excited to have them both here with us. Really excited about the co-presentation between Peter and Kirsty, and I'm absolutely looking forward to this. And I have just a little bit of bias because I have had the opportunity over the last few years to actually do some work with Peter, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So I know this is going to be an incredible presentation. It's a great way to start things off, the second supported pain self-management conference. So with no further ado, I turn it over to Peter and Kirsty Stilwell.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Yeah, really excited about the topic, and yeah, let's just get right into it. So my name's Peter Stilwell. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at McGill University. And this is Kirsty Stilwell. She's going to be co-presenting today. So she's a PhD in health candidate at Dalhousie University. And if you're wondering about the names, yeah, Kirsty's my wife. So in case you're wondering. So a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about in this presentation. So we're going to provide an overview of the Talk and Walk program that we developed in Atlantic Canada. We're going to go through some of the key elements of this program, and we're also going to talk about some of the challenges that we faced. So overall, really the aim is to inspire you. So whether you're a person living with pain or a healthcare practitioner, to potentially develop a similar program if you're not already doing so. So as a little bit of a background, so really this program all started when I was working clinically as a chiropractor. So I worked mostly with people living with persistent spinal pain. And I certainly wasn't a typical chiropractor because supported self-management really was a key focus of my practice. So I was often trying to get people out of my office rather than get them into my office. So really what I was trying to do often was collaborate with people to try to find ways to help them help themselves. So often trying to get them, like I said, out of the clinic or potentially seeing me less or not even at all. So at the time I was working clinically, but I also started to do research at Dalhousie University. So I was doing research on back pain, and I was seeing that like exercises like walking were quite accessible, and they were actually found to be just as effective as more kind of like potentially costly and complex exercises. So walking programs are shown to be just as effective as like core stability exercises or even programs like yoga. The list goes on. So I was often working with my patients to get them walking, if that was something that they were open to and if that was something that they were specifically interested in. However, a lot of the people that I worked with really had very limited resources, very limited supports. Many were very isolated. They were telling me they weren't quite confident in their bodies due to the pain and the conditions that they were living with. And a lot of people kept telling me like, hey, I want to walk. I'm interested in walking. I want to start some sort of a routine, but I don't want to walk alone. I don't want to do it by myself. So that was really the precursor to developing this program.
So let me jump in here and tell you a little bit about how the Walk and Talk program came to be. So Peter and I moved to Halifax over a decade ago, and we would just do weekly waterfront walks along this lovely, as you can see, boardwalk on Halifax waterfront. And Peter mentioned to me, oh, I have some patients who are really interested in kind of getting out and trying some exercise, but they're pretty socially isolated and pretty weary about going out on their own. So we decided to extend the invite for them to join us for a casual coffee and harborfront walk on one of our weekend walks. And so we'd start our get-togethers just kind of checking in and catching up about the week and then maybe figuring out our goals for the walking day. And we found that sometimes folks just wanted to meet up and, chat and then maybe walk for about 15 minutes. But as we continued to walk and meet up on weekends and get a little bit more mobile, our walkers got pretty confident and our walks lengthened quite a bit. And so from there, our walkers started asking if they could bring others with them. And then crucially, they asked us or suggested to us, could we open this up to the public? And that was kind of the point where the Walk and Talk turned into a bit more of a formal program. And so just looking at these photos a little bit more, I want to talk a little bit about the route that we established. So when we were doing our walk and talks, sometimes we'd try to go to different public parks or we'd try different public gardens, but we really found that the Halifax waterfront best met our needs. So as you can see, the ground is pretty level. There was no inclines. It was all the planks, the boards along the waterfront, and it was very well maintained. There's a lot of areas that were built in for rest, so a lot of benches, some nice hammocks, as you can see, some Adirondack chairs. So lots of places to stop and take breaks as needed. There's also a lot of amenities just built in. So there was public toilets, there was water fountains, which was great. And of course, we cannot fail to say that the view was actually exquisite. So it was really nice to kind of get out for our mental health as well and be close to the ocean.
Yeah, so we really started to actually expand and kind of formalize the program. So we never did any type of like formal marketing, but we're like, well, maybe we should actually create a bit more structure to this, because people are saying like, we want to bring friends, we want to bring family, we want to bring essentially members of the public. And so we're like, we need to get a bit more structured. So we actually ended up having 4 main organizers, and all of us shared similar values and had specific interests in person-centered care and the concept of health promotion. So this was myself. So as I already mentioned, at the time I was a chiropractor. I was also becoming a researcher. At the time I was studying exercise-related behavior change. Christy was a research trainee at the time, studying health promotion and health policy. But we needed more help. So I was working with a physiotherapist, Alexi Cano, at the time. So we were working in the same clinic. And so she was eager to get on board. And in addition to being a physiotherapist, she was actually training to be a medical doctor as well at Dalhousie University. And then we were fortunate enough to also loop in her husband. So her husband, which is weird enough, in the exact same position. So he was a physiotherapist in clinical practice, also training to be a medical doctor. So we actually were able to develop a really diverse team. But we expanded a lot, so we actually needed more. So we got volunteers, we reached out to the local university, and we got undergraduate students in a variety of health programs to actually help out. But the most important piece in terms of our leadership was our members actually took on natural leadership roles. So they were coming in, welcoming new members, providing details about the program. And central to our program was establishing peer support, mentorship, and sharing of resources.
So the Talk and Walk program kind of has our key vision, or our key purpose, was to provide high quality evidence-based health information while also promoting physical activity in a social and supportive environment. And we did this through 4 key elements. So our program was community-based. We created it for the community of Halifax by ourselves at the time, community members in Halifax. And we focused locally, and by doing this, it allowed us to consider all the different local contexts and issues that we were really familiar with. We also ensured no cost to our participants, so we never wanted there to be any financial barriers to their participation. We ensured that our talks and our walks were accessible, and so as researchers, we used our training to really translate some of that jargon-laden scientific literature for more of a lay audience. And we also made sure that the exercise or the walk portion of our program was really adaptable to everyone's needs and their abilities. And finally, like Peter had mentioned, we're really big into fostering this peer support. So we really encouraged our walkers to support one another, so talking together and walking together and just inviting others into the program and ensuring that they felt welcome.
So a little bit about the structure of the program. So typically we ran it on Sundays, about 2 times a month, sometimes more, depending on the time of the year. And we started always with a 30-minute health talk. So this was all driven by members. So we would actually ask them what topics do they want to learn more about, and we would make that happen. So either that was through us as the organizers stimulating these talks, or if it was beyond our scope, we were actually bringing in local guest speakers. But central to these health talks was an informal discussion, which would naturally occur among the organizers and all the members. And key to this was peer sharing. So people would often share their personal experiences, their challenges, and also each member would start to share resources and problem solve together. The next component is about a 30-minute walk. There was no obligation for people to do this. Sometimes people would come for only the talk component, depending on particular health restrictions. But by and large, most people joined in on the walking component. But it was also tailored so that people could actually go at their own pace, select their own duration. So because we had 4 key organizers, we were actually able to split up and follow along with the different groups. And on busier days, we'd also bring in volunteers to help out with groups at different paces. What was interesting too is that this walking component also involved opportunities to provide more one-on-one question and answer period. So our members could actually then go and ask, for example, the guest speaker for clarification or questions about the topic that they presented on, or if it was us, the organizers doing presentations, the members could come and ask us for more details about that particular topic. Similar to the 30-minute health talk, there was also a feature of peer support in the walking component. So members would walk together. They'd often talk about and debrief on the specific topic that we touched on during that day. And these members would often share their local resources and tips with each other, specifically related to pain and pain management. So just to give a little bit of a flavor for who was involved as some of the guest speakers, we brought in a pharmacist, a dietitian, a health policy maker, nurse, massage therapist, many others. Topics included new kind of like high quality clinical practice guidelines that were coming out. So recommendations for common muscle and joint pain related conditions. So we were actually taking the scientific guidelines that are meant for healthcare practitioners, and we were translating them in very kind of like accessible terms to members of the public. And what was like, I thought was the most interesting component of this was that these members were then taking these clinical practice guideline recommendations to their healthcare practitioners. And the practitioners, this was often the first time they saw these recommendations. So it completely flipped the dynamic where the patient was coming in saying, hey, look at these new best practice guidelines for physicians for low back pain. Here's the top recommended treatments, including things like self-management. And often the clinician's like, holy shit, I got to get up to date with some of this stuff. And so it really flipped the dynamics, and patients and members of our group would feel quite empowered. We talk about things like pain and exercise related goal setting and pacing. Health related behavior change was a recurring topic. Shared decision-making tips and tools. So we're often sharing resources with our members. And again, they would bring those to their healthcare practitioners to aid shared decision-making. So a lot of the folks attending our program were saying, hey, I don't feel involved in my care. I don't feel empowered. And so providing tools and resources like this actually created a better dynamic. We're often sharing free and low-cost local resources that maybe people weren't aware of. And this wasn't just us, like as organizers relaying it, it was our members sharing it within each other. Once again, a key kind of focus or a key component of our program was that members would share their experiences, they'd share their thoughts, they'd share their challenges, and we'd often have very kind of like collaborative and productive discussions. And I just want to highlight, though, that this wasn't in any form like healthcare consultations or treatment in any type of formal sense. We were just providing general information, and we created very kind of clear scope on our program, that it wasn't intended to be to provide any specific diagnosis or tailored information for a specific individual.
So despite being researchers, we actually never formally evaluated this program or conducted any studies on its efficacy. But we did gather some really helpful informal feedback. So the first one here, thank you all. We enjoyed our first Walk and Talk meetup. We think it's awesome that you give up your time to help us make our lives better. And we just love how this one really speaks to the importance of supportive self-management. Another walker said, love the topics. It's nice to get out and walk with others other than yourself. And, you know, they recognize the importance of addressing any kind of social isolation and recognize that, you know, by addressing that, it does impact their health and make them feel a little bit better. And the bottom two here, you know, it's nice to get some encouraging words as organizers for folks to just recognize, you know, what an awesome walk today, or what a fun and informative get together. Always love to get some thank yous from the walkers.
Yeah, people were really appreciative, and we're always like, let's formally evaluate this program. But that was our regular job as researchers, and we just kept this as fun. So this is just some examples of informal feedback that we received. But I also want to talk about how the program grew quite fast, and this created a lot of challenges. So initially, I was like managing RSVPs and sending out dates and meeting times through email, and I found this to be quite challenging. So we actually later ended up using the website meetup.com. And this made our lives so much better. We were able to more easily manage RSVPs. The organizers could share resources. And this group ultimately had about 1,700 members. So because we had so many members, we also had a lot of challenges. So we actually had to put caps on our events. So we had to usually cap it at around 30 people. But it made it easy with the website Meetup, because it would actually automatically create wait lists. And then as people, if they couldn't attend, the next person on the wait list would get a notification that they were able to join. We initially started out in coffee shops. That was way too chaotic with large groups. We definitely didn't make some friends with some business owners early on. It was just too small of spaces close to the areas that were accessible for walking. So we took a really like weird turn where it was like there was some recommendations of doing this at a brewery because it was really central. It was located close to a nice walking path, free parking. And we're like, hey, we're a health promotion program. Should we really be doing this at a brewery? So we put it to our members. We did a vote through our site Meetup, or our group on Meetup. And people were actually really encouraging. They were like, hey, the place serves non-alcoholic drinks. We're going to be there in the afternoon. Like if people want to drink, they can, but it's going to be responsible. And so we ultimately decided to take up this opportunity to meet at this brewery. It had nice movable tables and chairs where we could actually do these talks. So a really unsurprising, a really kind of surprising twist in our location, but it worked really well for many years.
So the program itself ran for 8 years, from its inception to when we had to call it off, specifically due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And just for some context, Nova Scotia had really lengthy and restrictive public health protocols around social distancing, and it made getting together with anyone outside your immediate household pretty much unfeasible for well over a year. And the restrictions in Nova Scotia were in place, I would say, longer than most other provinces and countries. As we watch the rest of the world open up, we were kind of like, oh, what about us? And then on top of that, Alexi and Jason moved. They got medical residencies in another province. And then soon after, we left Nova Scotia and moved to another province as well. So while, for all of those reasons, we had to discontinue the program, we're really proud that we equipped our walkers with the tools that they needed to really maintain their healthy habits. We created those support networks, and we did create and share a ton of local resources. So I'm sure it lives on in some sense.
Yeah, and we felt that like a lot of the members said, hey, we're going to continue to create our own groups. We built new networks. I'm no longer isolated. So really, we achieved the goals that we wanted, and it took new life forms after we moved out of the province.
And so as, a health promoter and program planner, I feel like it would be pretty remiss if I didn't touch on some important program planning considerations that really made our talk and walk successful. So I'll go over these quickly because I know we're getting to time. So all of our organizers, all 4 of us, we held very similar values. So we shared the same health beliefs around evidence-based practice, around supportive self-management, and around health promotion. Our organization tool, Meetup, that we used really reduced any excess time we would spend on event organization. As organizers, we'd often just meet for a beer after our event and plan out future topics and meetups. So it was really informal. It kept everything fun. So given that this program was entirely voluntary, having fun is what really made it worthwhile to us. For our walkers, for our attendees, obviously consistency is key, and this is not special to our Talk and Walk program. I think it goes for most programs, but really establishing those dates, times, and this consistent location allowed folks to schedule, so they could attend as often as they wanted. Plus, it really did model how important it is to schedule time for your own self-care. So Sundays, 2 p.m. at the brewery, that's self-care time. We also encouraged a lot of peer-to-peer support, and we really fostered those friendships and promoted attendance that way. And for us as organizers, it was great to see these relationships form and grow over time, and people really get out of their comfort zones and, make an effort to be a bit more social. Creating and upholding a safe and welcoming environment made attendees comfortable and be able to ask questions of us and share their experiences with others. So this group, we had a lot of diverse attendees. We had newcomers, people experiencing unstable housing, people from the LGBTQ+ community, and people with various levels of physical ability. So we made it really clear that we didn't tolerate any behaviors that would make anyone feel unsafe. And finally, as Peter alluded to, finding and securing that right meeting space really enabled our program to run as long as it did. And this informal partnership with a local business was truly beneficial for all.
Yeah. And as Christy mentioned, we would give back to the brewery after with our informal meetings and over a beer.
Yes.
So that said, this is the end of it. So I'm sure many of you are already running similar programs, and I'd love to hear about it. So please share. I think we have a little bit of time for question and answer. So I'd love to hear your successes or your challenges. And if you are wanting to develop your own program and you think it would be helpful to reach out to us, of course, feel free to contact me or Christy or both of us. So our email addresses are on the slide here. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here.
Well, thanks, Peter. I really enjoyed that, and I didn't know what. To be honest with you, I didn't know what you was going to be sharing about. I found it really interesting because it comes up against peer support, etc. I come from that sort of peer support background myself. Like I've been involved with that sort of stuff since the mid '80s. And to me it works. Because I think we learn from each other, etc. And the word that always sticks out for me, what you said, was fun. It's because I think sometimes when you talk to people about self-management or own self-management or supportive self-management, that don't sound interesting. But I think that's what we need to be doing is when we're developing concepts, etc., make it fun. And what sprung to mind, and Christy, you mentioned the dreaded COVID thing, where it brought everything to here in London, which is about an hour away on a train from where I live. But there's some guys that like the COVID thing, it affected everybody, especially with the mental health. And I come across back middle part of last year, a group of dudes in London who, for many it was because they was finding out that there's mental health issues going on, and they started up some like a walk and talk thing, but they're all in little areas around London, etc., and coming out into part of Essex where I am. So good stuff. Grania, have we got any questions at all?
Hi, and brilliant talk. Thank you. That was really interesting from you both. There is only one question has just come into the chat. I did have quite a few questions as I went along, but you were very good and you answered them all as I was going, and I started picking them off. So the question that's in the chat is a person who wasn't sure if they'd missed it, but they wanted to know, was there any funding for the organisation or speakers, at all, or was it all just purely done on a voluntary basis?
It was all us. We tried to keep it low cost for us, but among the 4 kind of main organizers, we would split the costs for like the meetup subscription costs. Okay. So it made it a bit easier when we were splitting it across 4 of us. I was like a poor PhD student at the time, so that it made it helpful for splitting that up. And then for guest speakers, we would usually buy them some sort of gift certificate or some token of appreciation. We didn't have a lot of money, so we'd do what we could, and people are always very appreciative of what we could give them. Yeah.
And then, so a question then from myself is, I apologize for not being overly familiar with what the weather conditions are generally like in Halifax, but I wondered how you dealt with adverse weather. If you'd arranged a meetup, how did you deal with adverse weather conditions and things like that on the day, or did they have to stop during the winter months if there was a lot of bad weather?
Yeah, our weather is terrible. For starters, there's like gnarly snowstorms and rain and dreary. But part of the reason, so Christy had showed some of those pictures of the boardwalk. So because it's so close to the water, like it's always the first place to get plowed, because they don't want people like falling into the ocean and whatnot. And they take really good care of that area more so than other spots. So it made it really ideal for our walking group. If people live close, they could easily walk in, or people would drive in as well. So it made it well, yeah.
I'll just note that we had surprisingly large turnout on some of the worst storm days. Once people got into the habit of, you know, Sunday afternoons at 2, they would show up in their rain ponchos and their snow gear. Like there would be days we would be at that brew and we're like, oh, I bet no one will show up today. And there 20 people would show up, like just geared up and ready to walk. So
I think it was the social piece though too. Like I think it's because like people were like, I don't want to be home alone. Like this is a regular thing. I'm still going out and I'm gonna be there. But that also created really intense tensions early on when we were in like little coffee shops, like all just like going in and like moving chairs, and there's like slush out and snow all over the place, and like we're not buying a lot of stuff. So the brewery was like a lot more accommodating for that type of behavior of our group, which they really supported us. So it was about finding that partnership. Yeah.
Yeah, that right sort of that right location. And then another sort of question is, do you know, like, do you still have any contact with any of the people who were involved in it? And do you know, do any of them still, you know, meet up for walks themselves? Is it still ongoing in some form?
Yep, we're still in contact with a lot of the early kind of core members, and like as sad as it was for them to like see the program and like as we all moved away, like they took on their own initiatives, and like we joke because we always see one guy, no matter where we are in Halifax, we'll run into him, and we had this slogan like motion is lotion, like it's good for the joints, it's good for the muscles. And so when we see him around, he'd just yell like across the street, like motion is lotion, like so it's still in his head. Stuff like that is good to see. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, Keith, have you got anything you want to add?
No, I think I mean great time. That was amazing, Peter and Christy. It was like Pete said, I was really interested to see where it goes, and I know I've got lots of thoughts formulating in my head and all the free time that I don't have and getting into things I shouldn't even try. But it was great, and I think that was awesome. And if we do get any more questions, we'll be sure to fire them off to you, or people do have your email addresses. Or if they need those, they can get hold of Pete and I. We can make sure they get in contact with you if they want to set up something similar. So yeah, thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. I loved it.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Stick around if you want to, or if you want to go. I don't know what time it is over there, but stick around if you want to.
It's like
do off,
10:30
as well.
10:30 over there. So
10:30.
I'll be around before we for a bit before we fall asleep.
yeah, right. Great. Thank you very much, Peter and Christy. That was awesome.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So, so up next, we're going to have a couple of minutes pacing break, get up and have a little walk around. Next speaker is Rajam Roose. Rajam, are you there?
I see her on the screen.
Yes,
There
yes,
she
I
is.
am.
yeah.
Sorry. Just looking for all those little buttons. Unmute, start this, start that.
I know you've got a slide to show. Do you want to fire it up, and we'll have I'm going to have a little stretch, and other people can have a stretch. We're back with you in 2 minutes' time. So how does that sound?
Sure. Should I go ahead and start my video, or
Yeah.
or do you want me to wait?
We're probably going to take like 2 minutes just to give everybody a chance to
Yeah.
stretch. So you could fire it up then if you want, Rajam. But if you want to get
Yeah, if you
your
want to
slide up,
fire up video, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that and go ahead and see how
Right.
fast I can blur my
There
background
you go.
before
Nice and easy. There you go.
sounds good.
before everyone notices the cat tower.
Okay, we'll see everybody in a couple of minutes.
Yep, your slides have come up nicely.
Oh, it's just one slide. Actually, I
Even
didn't know if I
better.
should I didn't know if I should have it up for the full talk, or I was gonna pop it up like towards the end of my talk. I don't know if that'll be better, just
Yeah,
because there's so
whatever
much
works
stuff
for
on
you,
there.
Rajam. Okay.
Okay.
It's whatever works for you.
All right, I'll pop it up closer to the end of my talk. That way people aren't I don't know, reading the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Just to warn you, you'll be spotlighted once your presentation starts. So one will be able to see you.
Pete, is it 2:30 in the morning over there?
Yeah, 2:34.
Wow. And for Grenier too, huh?
Yeah, and Dave.
Wow.
Yep.
You
We're
guys are,
hardcore. Hey, Rajam.
y'all are
we're
doing it.
Hardcore we are over
hardcore,
here.
Yeah.
yeah.
Gosh, I can't even
Somebody's
stay up
dancing
till
up and
midnight. These days, if I stay up past midnight, I wake up the next morning like I'm hungover, like I've been drinking all night, like it really hits me hard as I've gotten into my middle age.
I did go to bed and then get back up again. So I've kind of had a sort of sleep and then I got back up again like it's a new day. So that's it. It's fun.
Okay, so
Well, Pete, should we get going? Yeah.
Yeah, crack on. Pete, do you want to introduce our good friend Rajam?
Yeah.
You've been to the conference. Well,
Yeah. She and I go back a few years, so not 30, but we met 5 years, almost 5.5 years ago. So anyway, yeah, thanks for joining us, Rajam. We are really happy to have you with us on the second Pain Supported Self-Management Conference. So you are helping trailblaze something that is going to catch on and be amazing. So so I'll let you introduce yourself. You can speak a little bit about yourself, but I will just say to those that are listening live and that will be catching the recording, this is Rajam Roose. She is the founder and the sole person behind the amazing San Diego Pain Summit. And I call it the amazing San Diego Pain Summit because I've had the opportunity to be there twice and present, and it really is something special. She has built something that is really unique, and it's really hard to describe unless you've been there. So Pete and I wanted to ask Rajam to join us because in the time that I've known you, Rajam, you've been really, really, really focused and an advocate for supporting those that live with pain and the empowerment of them, and educating clinicians that people that live with pain are people first. And we wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk about your summit and who you are and why you do the things that you do. So with that, over to you.
All right. Well, I'll just say, again, my name is Rajam Roose, and I'm the founder, owner, and the sole organizer of the San Diego Pain Summit. And it's an honor to have been invited here by Pete and Keith to share why I created this event and how I keep it going. So I really appreciate the opportunity, especially as Pete and Grenier are up at 2:30 in the morning where they are. The mission of SDPS is to help clinicians learn ways to create frameworks of clinical care based on current pain research, which will hopefully lead to more effective pain management programs for their patients. As the audience here knows too well, pain is a multifaceted experience. SDPS supports approaching pain management from the perspective of the biopsychosocial model, at least until we have something better to work from. So, there's a willingness there to always learn something new. And rather than teach clinicians various modalities of pain treatment, SDPS aims to encourage clinicians to understand and develop ways to help their patients learn self-efficacy in the management of their pain. And I am passionate about changing how pain is managed in the U.S. One facet of our current opioid crisis, which has been going on for a while, really kicked off when the Center for Disease Control in the U.S. Put out their guidelines for against opioid use, and many physicians stopped writing prescriptions. They were also, it also became a crime in many places for them to give prescriptions for opioids. And they basically just cold cut, left all their patients without anything in place to help them manage their pain. And so that steamrolled into what we have now, which is a lot of people dying of overdose and that sort of thing. And additionally, in the US, in medical school programs, physicians aren't taught much about pain management and have generally been taught to rely on pharmaceuticals when dealing with a patient chronic pain. In fact, there's that study that went around a few years ago on Western countries showing that medical students don't get more than around 9 to 12 hours of pain education in their training programs. And this has definitely contributed to a massive problem in the US, and billions of dollars are wasted on treatments and research that has no benefit at all to the patient. So I got the idea for this conference in January 2014 during a workshop that I had organized for clinicians. And during one of the breaks, I overheard one of the instructors asking the students if they were learning anything about current pain research in their clinical programs. And a couple students said, yeah, we have, but we have no idea how to apply it in clinical practice. And that's when I had the huge light bulb moment, and I realized immediately there was a need for a conference where clinicians can learn to translate pain research into clinical practice. And at the time, I used the phrase crossing the chasm because that was based off of Jason Silvernail's talk from the 2015 summit, which is still fantastic to this day. If you have a chance, just go to the San Diego Pain Summit YouTube channel, and it's in the 2015 playlist. And it still gets to the heart of what SDPS is about, if you'd like to take a look at it. And at SDPS is not about teaching specific techniques. Rather, the goal is to introduce participants to current pain research and ways other clinicians are utilizing this research in their practice. So it's more about adjusting to add or take away from the frameworks that clinicians are already using in their pain management programs, as opposed to asking them to just drop everything they're already doing and recreate something new. And with this goal in mind, there's been presentations and workshops. Sorry, I have my little notes here. They stuck together. So there have been workshops and presentations on things like cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive functional therapy, using metaphors in art and patient communication, how to listen to patients, how to encourage patients to be proactive in their own care, how to improve communication with other professionals, growth sciences, such as understanding the etiology of neural tissue. And for example, I've also a couple times invented workshops. So I created a workshop one year where I invited 4 clinicians to teach improv, and they used improv and role playing to help the clinicians learn how to practice communicating with their patients better. So that was a lot of fun. And additionally, I bring in a couple research scientists each year to introduce relevant information that may be helpful when learning about pain. A lot of clinicians are busy and they don't have time to wade through a lot of research and find, what's good. And so they can come to the summit and expect that they're going to hear some really good and interesting research on pain. And most of the researchers who have come in are doing invaluable work, yet most attendees actually haven't heard of them until they present at SDPS. This includes people like Fabrizio Benedetti, Robert Sapolsky, Jeffrey Mogul, Lorimer Mosley, Tasha Stanton, Melanie Noel, Maxine Michak, and many, many other scientists. So if you go to SanDiegoPainSummit.com and scroll to the footer at the bottom of the page, you'll find a link of the history of past speakers and workshops. You can click on that and see all the talks and classes that I've hosted since the first one in 2015. And the summit has now a reputation for attracting bright clinicians from around the world to discuss and make connections. The clinicians who attend SDPS conferences are typically really passionate about keeping up to date with pain research and wanting to do the best for their patients. All the presentations are linear so that there's no breakout session, so attendees don't have to choose between seeing one speaker or seeing another. And then also, I think when you don't have tons of breakout sessions, it keeps the event from becoming too overwhelming for people. So there's, the typical talk and then a break and then a talk. And once I have all the speakers lined up and their topics at hand, I'll create the schedule. And my intention for the schedule is to have a flow during the event so that talks can feel like they belong together. And I think I do a pretty good job at this because a lot of times during speakers will add to their talk something they heard the speaker before them say. So that actually happens a lot where they'll say, oh, and when so and so said earlier this morning about so that kind of, I think that kind of like pulls this thread, it just brings this thread through the whole event. That's really nice. And I choose speakers and topics primarily based on what I hear attendees talking about the prior year during breaks. So I always have my ear out to listen to what people are talking about the most. And I'll also choose a topic based on if I see good arguments on social media. For example, back in 2015, I was seeing a lot of arguments and discussions around placebo and what it was and what it means in healthcare. And so that's why at the 2016 summit, I invited Fabrizio Benedetti because at the time he was a preeminent researcher on the subject of placebo. So that's an example of how I just listen to what people are talking about, and then I use that to decide on who to invite to speak at the event. And I've also chosen talks from speakers whose topics were declined at their own professional conferences, but when I heard about it, I felt that it was a very important talk to have. An example of this was back in 2021 when Dr. Daria Aller had mentioned on Twitter that she wanted to give a talk on long COVID, and her talk was declined. And when I saw her post, I was like, oh my goodness, I would love to have a talk on long COVID, especially in 2022, you know? So she came and gave a talk on her experience living with long COVID, and then also from the clinician perspective of things that people can do to help their patients who have long COVID. I also like to host topics that aren't already being discussed at other events. There's already plenty of conferences for learning formulas and techniques. So I created an event that focuses more on communication, addressing biases, focusing on the person in front of us at the clinic, and also on considering all the aspects of the social determinants of healthcare. And there are a lot of spaces created for participants to engage with each other and the speakers, such as during the breaks, people can get together in the hallways and talks. At the dinner party, where I usually bring in live music, a dinner buffet, and a photo booth. And so, for example, this year I'm also bringing in a magician to do little magic show. And I purposefully keep it casual and relaxed. So I don't do awards, I don't do speeches. I just try to create a nice space where people can connect with each other and also speakers. I let the speakers attend for free because it encourages them to come to the dinner, and then it makes them available to talk to other people who are there. I also have different size table heights. So some tables will be like the bar top table and others will be regular tables. And this is specifically so that people don't just sit in one table in one seat the whole time. People are encouraged to mingle because it's a buffet. So if you get up to get your food, someone's probably going to take your seat and you got to sit at another table or another space. So it's just kind of a way to encourage people to make connections and talk with each other. The venue also has several gas fire pits and a hot tub, and these are also spaces where people gather in the evenings to talk about what they've learned. And because the event is small, everyone pretty much stays on site. So it's so easy to just walk out of your hotel door and run into somebody else at the conference. So that really helps support that community. And even in the live stream, there's a chat room so that viewers can chat with each other, and then they can also participate. I have my MC purposefully pull questions from people who are viewing via the live stream so they can feel like they're engaging. And I always ask speakers permission to record and live stream their talks. And so for people who can't afford to attend the event or who can't afford the recordings, they can just wait till the end of the year, and then I'll just pop them up for free on the SDPS YouTube channel. And the SDPS conference is an interdisciplinary event. Anyone is welcome to attend. However, the main target audience are physical therapists and occupational therapists. And this is because I believe that they're in a unique position of being able to work with patients who are living with and recovering from pain in ways that a general physician may not be able to. And what I mean by this is that PTs and occupational therapists, they tend to have like a wide network of different healthcare practitioners. So they may be working with a psychologist, a physician. You know, their circle, their sphere is wider. And so That's why I tend to focus on them, but really anybody's welcome to attend the conference or speak. I don't choose speakers based on their profession. And each year SDPS has been approved for continuing education credits for physical therapists. And it's helpful because their application process is the least expensive. And then this year I did find an approval board for continuing education for occupational therapists that was also really inexpensive. So that was really nice. Unfortunately, I'm not able to offer continuing education for as many professions as I'd like because it is very expensive. It ranges anywhere from $500 a year to $6,000, and that's just for the application. It doesn't mean you're going to get approved. So the ratio of participants is typically roughly 70% physical therapists, and the rest of the audience represent a variety of professionals, including massage therapists, family medicine, chiropractic, personal trainer, yoga therapists, athletic trainers, educators. I would definitely like to see more occupational therapists at SDPS because much of the information that is shared on stage aligns really well with their professional training. And SDPS attracts clinicians from around the world. I've had people come from Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Mexico, India, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Portugal, and pretty much all the states in the United States. And since 2015, there's also opportunities for people to watch the presentations via live streaming, or again, as I mentioned, they can just purchase the access to the videos later. They can just do the recordings. And I also give 40 to 60 spots for clinicians who would like to access the live stream but can't afford the cost. So I've given away seats to clinicians in Kenya and Indonesia, the Philippines, Uganda, Botswana, Nepal, Palestine, New Zealand, Australia, and even here in the States for clinicians who aren't making enough income to be able to support any kind of continuing education. And I'm not really a fan of keeping all this content behind a paywall. So it's been somewhat of a process to figure out how to make these videos more accessible, but at the same time being able to cover the costs associated with maintaining SDPS. And I finally found a way to do this by I charge a small fee to access the recordings for a very short time after the conference is over. And then no one can purchase them for a while. And then at the end of the year, I just put them free on YouTube. And that seems to be really well and very helpful to people who otherwise just wouldn't be able to access this information. And SDPS is a privately owned for-profit company that I manage completely on my own. It's a good thing I enjoy marketing because I create the website, search optimization, all the marketing content. I run all the SDPS social media channels. I create the schedule. I organize speakers, submit continuing education forms, upload video content, anything else you can think of that it takes to run this event. I'd like to say, though, that during the weekend of the event, I do have a small handful of volunteers who help out. And I think it's a good thing that the same people want to volunteer every year. And typically, if someone who's volunteered before can't come, it has to do with something in life coming up and they're not able to make it out. Ironically, I'm unable to afford the application and legal fees I'd need to set up as a nonprofit. So I actually don't make a profit off of these events. From 2015 to today, I've probably made about $10,000. So that equals out to about $1,000 a year that I make organizing this event. I also have a scholarship fund that goes to help clinicians who make a low income to support them being able to come in person or on the live stream. And sometimes I save some seats. So for people who fill out the scholarship to attend in person and there's no funding, I'll just give them some seats. So we actually have a bunch of clinicians coming from Chile based on that. So it's nice that I can help out a little bit, help people come. And one of the ways I'm privileged is that I don't need to make an income off SDPS. I live in a family-owned property, and my husband makes enough to cover our basic living expenses, and neither one of us are really into having a lot of things, so we're naturally frugal. We both spent a lot of time camping and living outdoors with very little, so we don't need a whole lot. So it's good that I'm able to run this event because of that. And despite the downside of not being paid for my work, there is a lot of creative freedom I have because SDPS is run by one person. I don't accept advertisers. I rarely accept sponsors. So I'm not beholden to doing things that aren't controversial because I don't want to tick off my shareholders or my board or whatever. So it gives me a lot of freedom. So in that sense, it's really good. The venue is pretty small, as I mentioned before. I get around 70 to 150 attendees. There was a time for a few years I thought about growing the event, making it better. And so I was going to try and get a budget and bring in a small team to help me. But some of the speakers changed my mind because they said how much they enjoyed talking to a small room of people, and they felt like they could see everybody's faces. And they also felt less overwhelmed and didn't mind spending the rest of the weekend being at the conference and talking with people during breaks. Because some of them told me they'd speak at these big thousands of people in the audience events, and when they're done, they just want to go. They just want to go back to their room and get some sleep. So I think so I was like, you know what, I'll just keep it small. So that's why I decided to just continue keeping it small. The Premier 2015 summit was 3 days of lecture, and I got so much feedback about wanting hands-on workshops. So I started scheduling workshops, and the summit was actually 6 days with 4 days of workshops and 2 days of talks. But it's been getting very expensive to have workshops. So I've cut the workshops, and this will be the first year. We're back to 3 days, but the first day, Friday, there's going to be 3 interactive discussion sessions. So kind of like mini workshops. And people can attend all 3 days or just the 2 days. And I'll pop up my slide here real quick. This is for the upcoming March 1 through 3rd. SDPS has also had a strong impact on clinicians in the sense that it has inspired many clinicians to act and form communities. There's an active Facebook group called Exploring Pain Science, which has over 22,000 members, at least the last time I saw. It was founded by Ray Allen after he attended a San Diego Pain Summit, and he wanted to create a space to continue the conversation. Also, Pain Cloud ran a small conference for a couple years in Oslo, Norway. Pain Cloud was not inspired by the San Diego Pain Summit. However, after they saw me run a conference, that's when they were like, hey, we can do that too. So it did inspire them to run a conference for a couple years. And there's other groups such as the Michigan Physical Therapy Association Pain Summit and the Utah Pain Summit, which were inspired by SDPS, and they focus on looking at pain from a biopsychosocial perspective and learning current pain research as well. And I'll say a conference about pain management is nothing without including people who are living with pain. So I did host the first patient perspective panel in 2018. It was actually Joletta Belton who gave me the idea. In 2000, she was at she's been to every summit actually. She was in 2017, and she was like, hey, she gave me the idea of having a patient panel. So of course I was like, okay, do you want to be on the patient panel next year? And she was one of the speakers. And also Keith was a speaker on a panel. And again, these are all free to watch on YouTube if you'd like to check them out. Someone caught wind about the 2018 panel, and they reached out to the International Association for the Study of Pain, or IASP, to ask them why they don't have something similar. And because this person reached out to them, they created a patient panel at the last minute for their fall 2018 conference. So there is definitely an influence that SDPS has in the world of pain management. And feedback from attendees has been hugely positive. Many clinicians have admitted to me that prior to attending, they felt alone and without much support in their desire to work with their patients from the perspective of up-to-date pain research. And I've also worked to create a space where people can come and be like, hey, we don't know what we're doing, but here's what the research shows us, and here's what seems to be helpful. There's not a lot of safe places out there for people to say they just don't know or they're unsure. And I've tried to create a space at SDPS where people can feel comfortable talking about those things. And then after attending the SDPS, they report either to me in person or from blogs that I read on the internet about feeling a renewed sense of purpose and community. And it is the goal of SDPS to continue that feeling and offering clinicians current and relevant information they can use in their practice. And it is my hope as the founder of SDPS that this movement will help spark a change to turn this giant cargo ship of outdated pain management towards a shoreline that benefits patients the most. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to any questions. I'll take my screen down. Should I take my screen down?
You could leave it up for a bit.
Okay.
I'm not sure, Granny, were there any questions? I've got some thoughts I would like to add.
Yeah, I mean, there's two beautiful comments on there from Sue Reid and from Devan, just basically both saying that, you know, that Sue said she'd live streamed the summit during COVID and it was fantastic. And like many of us, myself included, long-term goals and dreams are to get to San Diego at the time that the summit is running, because it feels like an awesome place to be. And again, I'm saying that there's you get FOMO if you don't get there, and we all do. Those of us that are sitting online and watching all the things come through. I've had the privilege myself of being very minorly involved with it one year, and it's an amazing place that you've created, Rajam, and it's that space to be feel safe as a clinician, to question things and to ask questions and to engage with other people. That is one of the things that makes it really, really special. In terms of actually questions, there wasn't any specifically, although I do, as always, have one. I just wondered whether or not you've noticed in this sort of nearly, I suppose you're coming up for almost a decade, you know, you noticed at the start that lots of medical schools and other things in the US, you know, still weren't offering any real pain education in their courses. And it's something Pete and I have talked a lot about and regularly mentions on Twitter in the UK, you know, that there isn't a lot of pain education out there in medical courses. Do you hear or see of any change in that at all in the decade since you've started it?
I have not. And I think in order to, and I've actually started looking into like, well, how can this be changed? And basically it just takes, you just got to have lobbying power, right? You got to have lobbying power. You've got to change. You also have to figure out, like, however it is that curriculums are chosen for medical schools in the US, you have to, I didn't explore further into that, but it could probably be done, but you would have to start exploring with, okay, well, how are curriculums developed? And then, you know, see whatever influence. But I know, you know, it's going to, for the states in particular, it takes money and power to make any of those kinds of changes. And that's why those of us doing these little events and stuff, it's just how we can contribute, because we don't have those positions in power. Now, Mark Cardula did tell me in 2018 that the physical therapy curriculum was going to add a pain, more of a pain science in their training for all physical therapy schools in the US. However, when he told me that, he was like, well, with all the committees and red tape, who knows how long that will be. So, and I haven't heard anything more. So I don't know if they've adopted that yet, but yeah, no, I haven't
I
heard
think getting
anything.
things changed on a grand scale is difficult. I do know of at least 2 physiotherapy university courses in the UK where pain has become a sort of standalone bit of their, you know, and one even starting a biopsychosocial and self-management related model that Pete and I might well be involved in supporting them develop, which would be really exciting. So moving forward. And there is one more question there, which is from Devan again, saying that he's part of the organising committee for the NZ Pain Society Conference in Wellington 2025. And do you have any singular piece of advice that you could give him around being part of that organising committee?
No, because you're going to have more than one. So please feel free to email me ever if you have questions, because I don't mind sharing at all. I've shared my time with people, like the fellow who started the Utah Pain Summit. I spent like an hour and a half on the phone with him, telling him all about running a conference. And I don't mind doing that because I know that it's going towards someone who wants to do something similar. Now I do charge a fee if someone's like, hey, I want to, you know, start this back pain conference on acupuncture and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, here's my fee, you know. But for people who are doing like what you're doing, Hem. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, because whatever I say, it won't be the right thing probably, because there's so much, there's so much to do.
I would like to just add, Rajam, thank you for this. And to everybody who's listening, the reason, Pete and I asked Rajam to be part of this because you've been a big supporter of us and the work you do. You clearly over the years put people that live with pain front and center. And having had the privilege of being twice and presented at your conference, I've seen that with all the attendees. It's not a clinical summit, it is a people summit. So we wanted to give you this opportunity to sort of talk about what you do and why you do it. And and I think you have such an amazing background. You were in the healthcare field. You were a massage therapist, I think, for 15 years or something like that. And then I have to plug the fact that you wrote a book because you hitchhiked throughout the southern US for like 4.5 years. So you've got this sort of amazing life behind you, and then you've taken all your life experiences and you've put together this summit, which really truly brings those together that want to support and help people that live with pain and remove their bias or challenge their biases. And I've actually seen that happen and continue to interact with people that I've met there that have gone and charted a new path. So we wanted to give you that opportunity to share that with others, because I think there's a springboard for the work that you do for others to follow.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I mean, we all like talking about ourselves, right? So be able to come out here and talk about what I'm doing is great.
That was great.
Rajam, I need to correct myself, because I think at the beginning of this event, I said that this was like the first sort of event of doing this sort of type of conference. But perhaps I'm just I'm an old boy now, but you are the trailblazer because you did it. You started off back in 2015, and we met. Thank God we met in 2018 in Boston, etc. But I think what you're doing is these events should be. I always like to think more than once a year. I know, but obviously there's a cost involved and all that. And I know, from my experience of running the toolkit, etc., like the income doesn't match the outgoings, but I think you've done such a. I mean, you've just been awesome. There's no other word for it, and we want to support you as much as we can, really, because your sort of events are not they're a must, they're not really a choice. These should be going on all the time, so because as Ronya said, and you said about the there's still there's this problem why they're not teaching it in medical schools. I mean, I had a bit of a light bulb moment a few years ago when I was on the way to the gym one morning. I kept saying to myself, why don't they include self-management in their curriculums? And then the light bulb came on and said, well, because they're not experienced enough to teach it, So I think there isn't they can't teach what they don't know themselves, because all they know is that dreaded the medical model that they work from. But anyway, it's all about stepping stones, really, and I think what you're doing. It's small steps, etc., and what what everybody else is doing here on the conference. It's all small steps to, increase the awareness of the importance of self-management, etc. Thanks very much for taking time to be part of this conference.
Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajam. So it's probably time for another 2-minute break there, Pete, and then we'll get Sue up. Yeah.
Next up is Susan.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we'll see everybody in a couple of minutes.
Take care.
Hey, Sue.
Hey. All right, everyone, are you seeing that?
I am indeed, yeah.
All right. Maybe I'll stop sharing until people come back. Great.
You can leave it up, it doesn't matter.
Okay. I don't want to start with the formal complaint, but did I have to go after Rajam? Like, was
Yeah, it was done deliberately to upset you. Pete was saying that we were having the
We're not
organization
changing the
meeting.
order now, Sue. You're stuck.
No, that was
It's
fantastic.
all about, it's all about time factors, really. So
Oh yeah. Oh, you've done a great job. Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, good stuff.
How are things in Nanaimo this evening, Sue?
Well, they're interesting. My house is under construction somewhat, and my contractor took out all the lights in this room. So I think I
Excellent.
figured something out. But yeah, for a while there, it looked like I was telling ghost stories. So I think we're better now.
Okay.
But it's pretty nice temperature out here. We're about 10 degrees. How about you?
No, we're in our deep freeze here. We're around -3, but it just got cold here recently. So, but
Right.
no, nothing like Peter and
Yeah.
Christy in New Brunswick are dealing with over in New Brunswick. So yeah, no complaints.
No. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hope, I shouldn't say this probably. I hope we get another little cold snap. The bugs get so bad if we don't have another cold snap. So
Yeah.
yeah, but things are good.
Good.
so
Well,
ready?
Mr. Moore.
Yes, you go. Susan, are you happy to introduce yourself, or do you want us to go through some stuff?
I'm happy to do whatever.
If you,
I can toss a bit of an intro and then you can say all
Yeah,
the
go
wonderful
for it.
things about yourself. So
Dig it, go for it.
Sounds good.
all right. Well, let's get going here with Sue Reid-Schellinck. And Sue, I hope I pronounced your last name right, because I always worry if I got it right. So if I got it wrong, just slap me in the head next time we see each other, which will be in 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
So very quickly, Sue is one of my favorite professions in healthcare. She's an occupational therapist, and it is the undersung healthcare profession in pain management because you guys know so much and help in so many ways, and we need to raise your profession up, and you guys need to be leading in all that we do in pain management. So very quickly, like I said, Sue is she's an OT. She received her undergrad from UVic and her OT from UBC. So you do lots of things in British Columbia. You're involved with Pain BC, and you and I are both involved in the upcoming Pacific Pain Forum, which I'm looking forward to that. And Sue is, we can see by her slide, she's going to be talking about something which is a really cool topic that Pete and I have been recently getting into, and we had a chance to have a little chat with Sue on, which is prehab or prehabilitation. So with that, Sue, I will let you fill in anything that you would like to add about all the wonderful things that you are, and the stage, as we say, is yours.
Thanks very much. That was a wonderful intro. I don't think I could possibly add to that. I do want to just add though, and I guess from Rajam's talk, we actually in BC, we're not doing too badly. And when you hear that, what I'm about to tell you, you'll think it's a bit pathetic, but we do have actually in our OT medical faculty, I've been teaching a chronic pain module for 6 years there. And they've just asked to expand it because the students wanted it expanded. And interesting, every time I start the talk at the UBC, I would say, who wants to go into pain, management? And initially no one did. And now about a quarter of the class, so about 20 of the people, students do. So there's a bit of a change. Also, the physio program has a Rolly, who's an excellent physio, pain physio, and he's actually doing a lot of work with them too. So hopefully there's a movement starting. And thanks to things like the San Diego Pain Forum. So yeah. I'm Sue Schellinck. I'm an occupational therapist. I love being what I am. And many years ago, I was working at a pain program, and they were doing something called neuromodulation, specifically spinal cord stimulation. And to do spinal cord stimulation, they would do 2 assessments. The physician would decide if someone was appropriate, and then they would refer to a psychologist to see if there's any sort of psychosocial issues. Now, we didn't have a psychologist, and so I suggested that the people that were potential candidates see the whole team. And so we created this prehab program. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what that looks like. Oh, there we go. All right, I have no disclosures. So we're going to talk about what is prehab. We're going to talk about what the biopsychosocial assessment looks like. And then as an OT, what I do within the prehab. However, I'm very well aware of what the physio was doing, what the pharmacist was doing, social work. And we did at times, we're lucky enough to have a psychologist, but not the whole time, funding issues, of course. But this is what our program looked like. So essentially, what is prehab? It's prehabilitation. So essentially, it's doing rehab prior to neuromodulation, and specifically in my case, spinal cord stimulation. But what we found is sometimes there were people that would come into our pain program and they had a lot of nervous system involvement. And so we started putting them through the same program prior to them seeing our pain fellows for getting interventions. And we're finding a real success with that combination. First, they would do the rehab, and then they would see the physicians. And ideally, before the procedure, is when we want to do the prehab. And we also have to give it time to work. When you're doing self-management, we often call it the long toil of self-management, because it's not like you can do it once and it works. It takes some time. So they would often be in the prehab program for anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And most of it was on their own. We would just give them guidelines after we assess them. And again, it's to address that portion of pain that arises from the nervous system. Now, it's a funny thing about the nervous system, because when pain is longer than 3 to 6 months and ends up being chronic pain, the nervous system changes how it functions, right? We get into that sympathetic nervous system more often, that fight or flight more often. And it functionally, it changes physically also, but how it functionally it changes. And this is important because, you know, if our circulatory system functionally changed, we'd be in a bit of trouble, right? We'd be what? Having heart attacks. Everyone knows if our digestive system changes, because there's all sorts of sounds and things that are happening with our digestive system to show that it changes. But our nervous system, we don't know. There's nothing that tells us that it changes. And so we want to address that part, give information about that, but also address that part and help that to wind down. As I mentioned, our team was OT, physio, social work, pharmacy, and the physicians. And on occasion, when we were lucky enough, we had psychology. So the biopsychosocial assessment, I won't go into these unless you want later, and I'm happy to. But the first one's called the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure. It's an occupational therapy exam. It looks at what people's goals are, how confident they are in their ability to achieve them. So it's a kind of nice outcome measure. Then we looked at some thinking assessments. The McGill, of course, is for pain. We have some movement and then some lifestyle. Now this, throughout the neuromodulation literature or spinal cord stimulation specific literature, you're going to find that these, except for the COPM, these are the pretty standard, which is why we chose those ones. But also, whenever I meet someone, I want to kind of know where they are. So I ask them, if there was a line, and I usually use my arms for this, but you can't see them. But say 0 to 10. If 0 is you are barely surviving and 10 is you're thriving, where would you be on that scale? And again, usually it's a line and they point to somewhere on the line, or they verbally say, well, I'm barely surviving. And so that kind of reminds me of this. Now, this is from one of, I think, all of our favorite people, Bronnie Thompson. This is her from her Journey to Living Well with Chronic Pain research. And so one of the first things we want to do is make sense. And I love this diagram, and I have it in my office, and I use it all the time. Because that's the thing, when the nervous system functionally changes, it doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. Why am I sweating more than normal? Why are my thoughts negative? What's going on? So we want to look at 3 things that can help us make sense of this change. And one is diagnostic clarity. Unfortunately, not everyone can get a diagnosis, so that can be difficult. What we can do is symptom understanding. And this is probably my favorite part, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but basically I'm looking at what are the outputs of the nervous system. So what's happening on the outputs that can give that person an indication that their nervous system is changing. That might make more sense in a minute. And there's occupational existing, which is a nice way of saying barely surviving. And we want to get them we want to get them engaged back in life. and we want to get them with some good self-management skills and future planning. And that might be my favorite, because for me, future planning is looking at leisure and joy. If we can bring leisure and joy now to people who are barely surviving, that can help pull them out and help them look forward and give them hope. And I think hope is one of the best things as clinicians that we can give people, because it's hard to take that first step without it. So this is the fancy version. Melzack, a fantastic Canadian, created this, and also created the gate theory, which was the idea that a message would come into the spinal cord, and if the gate was open, it would go to the brain. If it was closed, it wouldn't. So this is the next step up, because this then adds in the thinking and adds in the emotions and adds in different sensations from our body. So I've changed this to, well, actually myself and a colleague of mine, Claire Lakes, changed this to a much easier to think about version. And here is the neuromatrix sort of functionally. So what we have is threatening input. Now, a threatening input can be a thought, a threatening input, like I'm not sure if I can do this. This seems scary. I always seem to fail. It can be sensations in our body, which might be where the muscles and joints are, and it can be emotions. And so all those things come into the brain, and they go all throughout the brain. And then the brain has to figure out, is this dangerous? And if it's dangerous, this is when we have the protective output, or what I've been calling the nervous system output. So we can have autonomic changes, which is going to be the heart starts to race and the blood pressure goes up and the blood redistributes to our arms and legs so we can run or fight. I would pick run, but anyway. So that's one of the things, our immune system, right? People with chronic pain tend to have more colds or more severe colds because the immune system can't work as well when we're in fight or flight. And then with that, with all those changes to all the different systems, our motor system, our endocrine system, we then get a much higher level of fatigue. We have poor sleep, we have breath holding, and we have muscle guarding and poor memory, and many other things. Everyone, which is so frustrating and also makes it so interesting, everyone is different. So we never really know what one person is going to be, but we give them the education and the tools to help them figure this out. Continuing with the biopsychosocial, this is the Canadian model of occupational performance. And what I'm going to talk about today is that yellow. So this is how we view people in general. And we're going to look at the yellow triangle. And if you can't see, in the middle of spirituality, then we have affective, being emotions, physical, and cognitive. And so we're going to look at prehab-wise what we would do to help with that. But also as an OT, we look at how they are in their life with their self-care, their productivity and their leisure, and then how they are in their different environments. So physically, what do we do as OTs in rehabilitation? Well, we're going to try and figure out how much of this is musculogenic pain, because that can be even a higher area of pain than the primary course of pain. This is the secondary cause of pain. That's all that muscle guarding around the area of pain. And that is a very much more of a central, it tends to be a central phenomenon, which we also want to sort of tease out how much is central and how much is peripheral. And then we want to look at balance issues. It's quite interesting. People who have pain on one side of their body can often lean away from that side of the body, or if they have pain in their back, their neck or their low back, they tend to lean forward. And that leads to sort of a discrepancy between the brain and the body as to where they are in space. And that can also lead to balance issues. So we work with that, and in general, safe moving. Then we look at different postures. We also notice people who have sort of back pain will have different ways to use their back. They'll stoop or they'll bend, so we want to look at how they're moving and how they're adapting their moving, and how we can help them to have movement that is safe and comfortable, and using the right muscles. And of course, cognition. One of my favorite things with occupational therapy and people in pain, because when I ask people about their thoughts, they always seem to think that's fine, but they don't realize how much their thoughts can be changed through pain. So the things that we see most, or that we work with the most, are the quality of the thought. So that's usually negative. So the thoughts can be very negative and very strong, and that can be really scary, because we tend to think when our thoughts are who we are. So when our thoughts get very negative, that's hard on us. We feel like we're changing, our personality is changing. But on the opposite end, if people are too positive, that's also not great either, because I had one client and I said, I feel like if you're sitting on a chair in the middle of a room on fire, you'd say, oh, this is so warm and nice. you know, think about those people in Nova Scotia. This is fantastic. And that's also not realistic. So we want thoughts that are not necessarily positive, negative, but I like to call accurate thoughts. And then the quantity. Often we say there's people who have 60,000 thoughts in a day and we don't know many of them. Many people in pain hear all those thoughts, and it's a very busy mind. And the other thing we look at is our thought errors. So things like future predicting, or that sort of always, never. Whenever I hear always or never, right? There's no gray area in that. It's all very black and white. So we work on those kind of things. And again, what we're really doing is educating people on the connection between the nervous system and their thoughts. And that really thoughts are only a reflection of the nervous system. So they're actually a really good tool. If you start getting really negative thoughts, that could be a clue that maybe your nervous system is getting too excitable. Maybe your nervous system is heading into that sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight. And also when they're doing things, when they're functioning, what are their thoughts like? Because our thoughts can stop us, or they can really propel us forward. Yeah. And then there are cognitive changes that happen in the brain, such as thinning of the cortical component of the brain. But we also know that with positive neuroplasticity and those areas, the gray matter can actually enlarge again. So that's fantastic to know. And again, for affective, we're looking at the common moods or emotions. So we're going to look at anger, fear, depression, anxiety, guilt, and shame. Those are the big ones. And we see a lot of guilt and shame. And I think that's maybe underrepresented in this world of chronic pain, because guilt and shame are kind of always there, and they're always niggling at the nervous system and building it up. So I think we need to work a bit more on those ones in particular. And often it's the lability between them. All of a sudden they're fine, then all of a sudden they're really angry, and I've never gone angry so quickly, or I've never felt anxiety so quickly. And so again, these are difficult, but they're also signs of what the nervous system is doing. So we can do stuff. Once we recognize that, once we learn that, then we can do something about that. So again, emotions can be accurate. They can be a true reflection of what is happening, or they can be a reflection of a nervous system that's ramping up. We also look at the pain, stress, anxiety, trauma, the relationship between all of those. And the whole idea is to recognize the mood early, and then learning if this, again, is an accurate emotion, or if this is something that tells me the nervous system's changing. Again, we look at lifestyle. We want to look at socialization. We want to make sure that people have support. We want to make sure they're active in the community. One of the highest levels of longevity, the indicator, sorry, of longevity is being out in your community. So we want to get people out in the community in a safe way. And we want to make sure that every day in people's daily routines, that they have a nice balance for the nervous system. So the nervous system is challenged every day. For most people, that's not too hard. Our activities challenge it. But we want to make sure that there's enough calming moments in the day for the nervous system. And then we want to make sure that everyone has a break from pain. And that might be watching TV with a heating pad, that might be a hot bath, that might be whatever it is. But making sure that that is okay. And we tell people it's okay to have that break. Because I think 10 years ago, it's like, oh, people have to be active participants. They can't be passive. Passive is bad. But I think we all need that break. And so supporting that. Now, a few years ago, I created the endorphin prescription because I was a former athlete, and I had never had to think about anything. I never had to think, what should I eat? What weights should I do? Everything was given to me. So I wanted to give this to people in pain, because it just didn't seem fair that they were left with all this information, and where do they start? So half an hour of laughter. That's the first bit. So we can do that through movies. We can do that 5 minutes at a time. We can do lots of different ways we can get laughter. You can create a giggle box for that one if you want. Half an hour of rest or relaxation. So this is more not the passive, but this is more like meditation, mindfulness, relaxation, muscle relaxation kind of stuff. And then half an hour of safe and gentle moving. And my prescription for moving is always, like medications, low and slow, lower than you think, but it's something that you want to do every day. Then we look at the top three. We want to try and minimize the smoking, alcohol, and stress. And the bottom two, the sleep and nutrition, we want to make sure that we can amplify those and make those better, because everything in a person's life can make the pain worse. And that is a really, really hard and true fact. But if it is true, and this is the OT in me, then everything in the world can actually make it better. So we just need to address those things and figure out what things are making it worse, and then look at how we can turn that around. So after they've been successful in the rehab or prehab, they would then go to get their either their neuromodulation or their epidural or whatever it might be. And we would look at, again, re-administering the things we did before, especially when it was a spinal cord stimulator stuff, so we could see the effectiveness of that particular technique. Looking at musculogenic pain, because that is common. Sometimes it'll go away after a treatment or neuromodulation, and sometimes the primary area of pain is healed, but the secondary area is still there, and that's that musculogenic pain. So we look at that. And then we revisit the healthy lifestyles, and we facilitate throughout the whole time, we're trying to get people to enjoy life again. I suggest 15 minutes of something we love every single day. It makes a world of difference. And that's my story. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was great, Sue. Thank you.
That's a whirlwind.
Yeah, no, there was lots there, and I got some things that I want to ask you, but I want to check with Grania first to see if there's any questions. Some burning with some stuff.
There are no questions that have come. Oh, I've taken my camera off. Sorry. There's no questions that have come through, but as always, I also have questions. But I'll let you go first, Keith.
Well,
And
okay. Well, I got just a ton of bias here, Sue. So just the whole concept of prehab I find very interesting. And you talk about your experience in the neuromodulation world. I mean, obviously, I have experience with that as well, being an 05 neuromodulation patient, and then got the latest and greatest DRG. And you talked about the process of prehab, and what it's not really a question, but more just sort of a statement, and I'd be sort of interested in your thoughts. So back when I was went through the assessment, there wasn't the breadth of the assessment that you talked about now. I saw the doctor, David Hunt, who was amazing.
Yeah, so good. Love him.
Yeah. Brief interview with a psychologist who I thought was going to tell me I was crazy because everybody in the last 20 years had told me it was all in my head. And then they said, away you go. But the concept of prehab, what I wanted to talk to you about was you've just hit on so many of the interesting aspects of pain, when it goes from that acute to chronicity. And what I wanted to get your thoughts on, and I'll use me as an example because I happen to know me and my experiences rather well. When I was 12, I broke my collarbone. I broke it. It hurt. It healed. I was fine. I had a car accident, broke a bunch of stuff, ripped a bunch of parts. It wasn't so fine. And healthcare still has a tendency to be very black and white. Well, it's acute. And then after 180 days, you're 181 days, you're now into chronic. I would suggest for me, my path to chronicity was the day that the surgeon said to my parents, well, he's going to live. We put him back together and he's going to have some problems later.
Right.
What are your thoughts on healthcare starting way upstream back then and saying, let's teach them all the things that you've talked about now so they don't go through these challenges and these thoughts and these feelings and emotions because we've given them something to make sense of it. So
yes.
Just pose that to you.
Yeah. And it's, I started practicing in 2000. So it's interesting to me, it's how much it's changed in that time. It really it is. And we're not seeing prehab elsewhere. That I was on the Canadian Neuromodulation Society board, the only non-physician for 7 years trying to get this across Canada, and didn't quite do what I wanted to do. But yeah, I think we're making changes now out where we are. We've got the Transitional Pain Center. So I wonder, do you think that would have been a difference for you?
I think so.
So the Transitional Pain Center looks at people who get surgery, and they look at certain various outcome measures. And if you meet those outcome measures, then you go into a transitional. So it's the idea that you don't have chronic pain yet, but that these things will help you. But I think what I would like, some people like with complex regional pain syndrome, that nervous system doesn't wait 3 to 6 months. It's on day 12 and they could have it, right? So I don't know. I think the nervous system is a little bit more finicky than we're able to really put it into a box and say, this is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've just hit the nail right on the head there. That was a brilliant talk. Thank you ever so much. I second Pete's earlier thing in that I don't know what we need to do to get occupational therapists up there in people's understanding and expectation. I don't know whether it's I don't know what it is, because you're all you're all
Yeah.
amazing. And I, as a physio, as a background, I think, occupational therapy seems to still be quite undervalued as a in pain services. Certainly in the UK, there's a real
Yeah.
emphasis on physio and psychology, and obviously both of those professions are important, but occupational therapy just still doesn't seem to be quite valued enough, and it's such a real shame. Interestingly, I work also, or I did until 2019, I worked in a neuromodulation centre in the UK.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I have a certain amount of experience with that. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that maybe we weren't calling it probably as such prehab, but we did have physio and psychology and other sort of multidisciplinary assessment prior to
Right.
implants. And obviously because of the NHS, people were waiting quite a long time to get implants anyway. And I just wondered whether or not, having introduced the sort of prehab thing, has it shown in comparison to outcomes of SCS in other areas? Have you shown that your outcomes are generally better? Because that's what we were sort of seeing, and what we were presenting at conferences, modulation conferences over here, is that getting that education in early doors seemed to improve the outcome from the
Right. Well, I'll address the first bit about occupational therapy. It's kind of funny because in BC, OTs run the show. Like, we run all the major pain programs. We run them all, and we're a big part of that. And certainly with Pain BC, they've been very good to the OTs. So yeah, I think the biggest issue with occupational therapy is the funding. Is who's going to fund it? I'm private pay now, and that's really hard because now I miss that population of people who would come off the street, and there's so much I can help them with, but they like I need a funding source for that. And really interesting question. Yeah, I've got some, we were a smaller center, so we would do between 12 and maybe 20 in a year, but some of those were revisions, so they weren't. But so I don't think we would have had enough. It would take years and years and years and years to get enough, ends to figure out enough people to figure out if it was. But we had some anecdotal stuff. I know certainly we had people who went through, and this was not our intent, but they would go through prehab and then say, no, actually, I don't need the neuromodulator anymore. I'm okay. And then we had a couple of people who had what we're referring to as husbandectomies or wifectomies. Who would eliminate that massive stress, and then they also had enough skills with that lower stress to manage the chronic pain without the neuromodulator. So again, we weren't trying to do that, but we did find, though, is that certainly for headaches especially, and that would be more of an occipital, is that there was the skills that we gave them were quite helpful with that bit. They seemed to be doing better, but again, it's kind of hard to say because we didn't have enough people. We certainly didn't have enough people to have a random control trial. Yeah, for sure.
But it would be. I mean, everything that we know about, sort of helping people to live well with their pain condition tells us that the more you can inform people, and I agree with both of you. I think the challenge is always, when people have any kind of acute injury or surgery or any kind of trauma, is working out, that's the holy grail, isn't it? Working out who's going to go on to develop longer term symptoms and who's going to recover, and what are those predictors and markers. But actually, in general, if people in healthcare services were provided with good quality, sensible, safe advice, not having the I don't want to diss orthopedic surgeons. I don't know if there's anybody on the call who is one, but not having the orthopedic surgeon tell them that well, you're probably going to be in a wheelchair in 5 years, as a throwaway comment, where they don't necessarily mean that, but that has a really profound impact on people. And just not getting access to good quality information early doors. Who knows how many potential patients with longer term pain that you could help with that. So getting in there early with good quality information, with general advice about supporting and self-managing and doing things yourselves is just vitally important for everybody, really. And the more we can get that up and running, the better, I think. So prehab, you guys, that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, and I think too with we have in Canada anyway, or in BC anyway, we have these acute hospitals, and so I remember one of my clients saying to me, you know, I have a chronic disease, but I'm coming to an acute hospital. And so I think, you know, we're sort of parted off in a different area of the hospital, and the acute therapists that are on the floors, you know, don't have enough of this information, and or the funding to do it. So yeah, it would be good. We're starting. We're baby steps, I think. Yeah.
I think you you know your when you related the story about your prehab and giving people sort of this runway, this breadth and depth of information, and them saying, oh, you know, thank you for that, I don't need this intervention. I think
Yeah.
that is one of the key components to this whole conversation that we're having tonight, which is, or in the middle of the night, afternoon in Australia and New Zealand, supported self-management. Because I'm a believer in interventions, right pain, right patient, right time in their life, but it's not an either or, right? It could be a together, but people need to be informed and educated and understand, and then they can decide if they need to go to that step or not. So that, I think, was just a beautiful way of explaining that's really what foundational supported self-management is. Give people the tools and the education and the knowledge, and then they can say, you know what? I think I'm good. I don't need you to put the thing in me. I don't need you to stick a needle in me. I don't need to be cut open again because I've got this. And that's what we need more of. Yeah.
Right. Two really quick things. I used to the first step into our whole program to physicians or anybody was to do an education class, which I gave. I talked to over 10,000 people in my time there. And what would happen is 20 people would come to the education session, and then a little while later they'd get phone calls for you know, to see the doctor. Pretty consistently, 10% or 2 out of those 20 would say, no, that's enough. And now these are people who failed with their physician, they failed physio, they failed every other modality out there, came to a tertiary pain center, just had the education, and 2 out of the 20 were like, no, I think I'm fine. So I think that's pretty powerful. But the other thing to think about to get everyone on board, I'm not trying to, you know, get the physicians out of money or take clients from them. But if we can wind the nervous system down sufficiently, then the medications work better, or they can wind down their medications, or that the interventions work better, because now we have very peripheral focused pain instead of this sort of wider nervous system pain. So yeah, it's good for everyone. But you know, I could talk forever about this, so I'm going to stop now. Thank you so much for having me.
The last thing I'll just close with, you've got these just pearls of wisdom that you bring up. So you talked about the 2 out of the 10 that, you know, failed physio and failed all that. I think what it is those systems failed them because they weren't given this information, these tools to be able to say, no, I'm okay. So they are kind of tossed to the side and they're told, no, it's you, not us, when in fact it's a system issue. So beautiful information. I love it all together. We could talk about it all night long, and we can't because we have other presenters. So
that's true.
Thank you, Susan. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
I'm a big fan of prehab. We've got myself and Keith. Did you mention it, Keith? We did a prehab toolkit last year.
I did not say that. I just said we talked to Sue about it, but I wanted not to blow smoke up our butts too
And my
much.
apologies. I meant to put it into I meant to say at the very end that, you know, go here for resources to start right now. And I just, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's a fantastic. I looked through their prehab, the pain toolkit prehab, and it's very, very good. So yeah, you definitely try that out.
Hey, the $5 in the post.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Sue. Appreciate it. And
You're welcome.
a couple of minutes pacing break, get up and move around. And just a reminder as well, anybody watching the live version, there's closed caption. So if you have a hearing impairment, you can follow us via the closed captions. And I noticed the other day the closed captions it can also be in other languages. So next time we do one, Keith, I think we need to promote that a bit more, like, you know, so we can get where people who perhaps English isn't their first language, they can follow the event in their own language using the closed caption.
It's a great idea. They can subtitle for those that speak that UK language that you guys have, so we can understand what you're saying. So yeah.
And up next we got Devan.
So should we take our 2-minute break here and then?
Go for it.
We'll,
I've just had made myself a coffee, so I've had a little.
Okay.
I've had my movement break, my stretch break.
Okay.
But you go ahead.
Okay, just give us 2 minutes, Hem, and then
Yeah, go for
the
it, dude.
floor is yours.
Yeah.
Hem, welcome. So I've asked it so that you can unmute yourself because we've blocked it for others. So hopefully you can now speak.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Dave. Kia ora.
Perfect.
So can I share screen?
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that. Is that looking okay?
It does indeed.
Fabulous.
Yeah. It's really good.
Okay, I've just put in presenter view so that you guys are not seeing that. So yeah.
So, Hen, can you give us a weather report? Because the weather out here in the UK and other places around the world is pretty naff at the moment. So, are you still in your summer, aren't you?
Yeah, Pete. It's a nice sunny day. It's actually 21 today. So
21.
yeah, 21. So sorry,
Make
Pete.
it better.
Yeah, we do get some good weather sometimes. So yeah, we're just making the most of it by sitting inside.
Good stuff.
I'll quickly go to the loo and be back in a
Yeah, you
minute.
go for it, dude. Yeah, no worries.
All right,
And
our
just
guest
having
of
a kidney
honor is
break.
back.
He's just
What?
having a kidney break.
No, he's back.
Oh, he's back, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, back.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
The kids are waiting outside desperately. So bad timing in terms of getting out, but I'm here.
So
right.
we'll make a start. So Hem, nice to meet you finally. I've been following you. Must be I'm not sure, in a couple of years now on social media, and I don't think we've had a proper conversation. But when we was discussing who to last year, who to get on this year's conference, your name come up quite quickly, really, because of the work that you're doing, especially around support self-management. So would it be you? Do you want to? I've got a lot of blurb here about I've cut and pasted off to the website about you, but I think some what perhaps we can carry on with what others have been doing. Presenters just telling people who you are and what you do. You happy
Cool.
with that?
Yeah. Thank you. Kia ora, Pete, and kia ora, Keith, and kia ora, everyone. Kia ora is the native Maori language in New Zealand, means wishing you all well, and how are you? Thank you, whatever. So thank you, Pete and Keith, for having me in this supported self-management conference today. So so I'm joining from Wellington, New Zealand today. So I work as a lecturer in the University of Otago, based in Wellington. And also the other 2 days of the week, I work as a pain management physiotherapist in a tertiary pain service. So yeah, I got these two roles. So where I'm from, as you can see, this is the coolest capital city in New Zealand, the Wellington. And that's my office campus, Otago building. And they often say on a nice sunny day, nothing can beat Wellington. So it is a nice day, and I'm actually inside for a good cause. But it can blow up a little bit, as you can see the Wellington, the sign and it can also get a bit bumpy because Wellington has been named as the most turbulent airport in the world early this month. So yeah, you just have to Google Wellington landing. You will find some funny videos, but you're most welcome to Wellington. So, so the next 20 minutes, I'm gonna take you all for a little journey, a bit of a personal journey, academic journey, of a researcher turned clinician or clinician researcher. Yeah, I hope we sort of reflect and learn along the way. So that's what I'm hoping for. So I think the sort of the journey started perhaps maybe 8 years ago, and where one of my first sort of chronic pain focused research projects, where I was asked to be a part of a group pain management program in the service that I'm currently working on. So, but as a researcher, I sat in a group program. So it's a 12-week program, and usually about 10 to 12 people attend it. It was quite a life-changing experience for me because until then, so I'm a physiotherapist by background, my understanding of pain was quite biomechanical. Like you have to have a physical sort of impairment to have pain. I think that's partly driven by my sort of experience of working with people with amputation. So I was the physiotherapist, and the clients that I saw were all like had phantom pain, stump pain, and back pain sometimes. So, but being as like an observer in that program, it was fascinating to see like people with different pain conditions, but the impact of pain on their lives were very similar. And it was a great learning opportunity to see over the course of 12 weeks, the sort of the discussions they had, the sort of the camaraderie they developed, and the sort of the peer support, the cheering others' successes. It was amazing, and it was great to see their confidence sort of grew over the 12 weeks. And by the end of 12 weeks, there was a sense of what are we going to do now? Like there's a bit of like, how are we going to be alone ourselves after this course, after this sort of peer support now in this supported space. So I think that was one of the sort of the inspiration for my very first sort of chronic pain focused research, was to sort of find out what patients or people have found helpful long term once they have completed a self-management intervention or a program or any sort of intervention. When they're on their own, what sort of things that help them or challenge them. So so it was a qualitative review like of qualitative studies. So we actually combined all the qualitative studies which asked patients about their experiences of how they're self-managing after an intervention or a program, and what sort of came in the way. So we actually had about 33 studies, and we sort of synthesized the experiences of about like 500 different sort of patients from across the globe. So I thought I'll share some of the key sort of the meta themes that came up. So some of the key things that really helped was that sort of the self-discovery, like helping that sort of developing this new perspective of looking their self with pain. They talked about like previous to the program, it was their identity sort of defined by pain, and now they're actually starting to see themselves with pain, and I think that was a critical sort of cognitive sort of change, and that didn't happen in isolation. So when they started to sort of practice some of the things, the self-management strategies that they learned from the program or the intervention, like the neuroscience and the pacing, the breathing, the cognitive behavioral techniques, it actually made them to sort of disentangle themselves or start to sort of see their own new self with pain. And when that happened in a group context, that sort of shared learning, that sort of safe space, it helped them to sort of accept their new self with pain and put that together with very empathetic, supportive clinicians where who were truly interested in them as a person, who validated their condition, and along with the support of family and work. Again, this is all like positive spiral. But as we know, like living with long-term pain is not without challenges. And someone said in one of those studies that living with pain is a 24/7 job for 365 days, and therefore the motivation to put those strategies into place can become challenging. And again, if you have those sort of bad days like flare-ups and other comorbid conditions, it makes it even more challenging, and they both can sort of influence each other. And especially on those flare-up days, acceptance of this new self with pain becomes even more hard. And again, people with pain, as we were talking about, like they are the frequent users of health system, and health professionals have different understanding of pain, and they are a continuum in itself. So, and if healthcare providers are not validating, being judgmental, again, it makes the sort of the self-management even hard. So what we thought was we put it all together, and what we figured out was like this living with pain and self-managing pain is a continuum, like and it's a momentary process. On the one end of on the right-hand side, you can sort of be accepting, you can be more self-compassionate, and you can feel empowered and have that self-efficacy. And suddenly things can change, life happens, your ability to manage pain changes, and you can be on this left-hand side of the continuum. So it's such a fluid and dynamic process. And I think one of the key things that came up was like people need ongoing support. And again, we were talking with the earlier presentation, as Keith mentioned, like the health system is predominantly designed for treating acute conditions and not long-term condition or supportive self-management. And that's why I think ongoing support in the form of peer support is going to be a more accessible form of supporting self-management. And I think that's where the work that you're doing, Pete, Keith, and Julita, like it's sort of making this sort of ongoing support in a global scale, really. So I think this is my sort of the stepping stone into sort of chronic pain research sort of 8 years ago. And I sort of bold this healthcare providers because they can make or break this self-management sort of principle or the philosophy. And that's why I thought maybe I'll phrase this talk as a clinician myself in the last 3 years working in this tertiary pain service. To see like what is it like as a clinician, and how can we I was mainly looking at my journey to sort of share and learn along the way. So one of the first sort of initiative or experience I wanted to talk about was around equity. So this is an ongoing program of work that I'm doing with the local sort of the indigenous population of New Zealand, the Maori, in collaboration with my Maori community partner here based in Wellington. That's probably because Maori have a higher prevalence of chronic pain than non-Maori and have experienced a lot of inequities. And if you look at the sort of the finer details in terms of why is it like that, there is a lot of historical factors, but also me working in this tertiary service, I can actually say that I don't see a lot of Maori patients. And by the time they come to see us, the tertiary service, they present with a lot of high disability and very low self-efficacy. So this picture, I'm sure you all would have seen it on the right-hand side. It's the equality and the equity and the justice-based approach. I think the way the services were currently delivered were not actually addressing the inequities for Maori. So actually what we did was we went and asked the experts, actually the people living with pain, in terms of what they want and how the services need to be delivered for Maori. And they were very clear. They said, Hem, why don't you ask your pain specialist to come to our Marae? So Marae is a community space, and run a monthly clinic there. And they also suggested, okay, Hem, you run your 12-week program in the hospital, weekly program. Why can't you run the program in the Marae or in the community? So, and we did that. So the whānau, so that's whānau focused. Whānau means not only the individual, but also their family and significant others as a collective. So I think that's one of the key differences between mainstream services, because it's often focused on the individual, and if you don't do it, it's your fault. Whereas the Maori way of doing things, it's not only the individual, but the collective as a whole. And they wanted it more strengths-based as opposed to deficit focused. So they wanted to build on their what they already know, or what they're already doing, and focus on the collective and the person and the collective as a whole. So I won't go into the details of the program, but some of the things that we used could be interesting to share, because one of the things that we were actually gifted was this, the nata. Nata means snail. So it's actually used in Maori traditional treatment to treat respiratory illnesses. And the left-hand side is actually a Maori model of health. So the way they look at health and well-being is actually a balance between these all four sides of this meeting house. So you don't treat one aspect, you rather treat everything together. So one can also affect the other. And as you can see, it's physical, mental, social, spiritual. So the way we used it for our program was pain can make the person and their whānau, or the family and the significant others, to go within their shell. But the idea of this program is to help them to come out of their shell and still live well with pain. So we worked with another Maori artist, Izzy. So so these 6 sort of images became the icons for the 6 sessions of the program. As you can see, the idea is to help them to come out of their shell, the pain, even though it remains, but they have, it helps them to come out and still move in the direction where they want to go. So the way we used it as an example here, in the first session, we asked the whānau, the people who took part in the program, in terms of writing, what are the things that make them to go within their shell? What are some of the barriers in terms of pain management? And also we asked them things that are helpful, which help them to come out of their shell. And here's a bit of a summary. People said the historical, experiences of racism, the pain itself, and the disconnect that pain brings, the historical trauma, the whakama, the stigma, which Sue was talking about, the stigma of being in pain and asking for help. All those things made them to go within their shell. And there were some things like, in terms of things that were helpful in the snail part, they wrote a few things about the environments, being outdoor, being in the nature, being at whānau, being with family, doing things, all those things as things that were helpful. It was interesting. We did that exercise in the first session. There were a lot of things written on the shell part, not so much in the snail part. And then we repeated that exercise in the last session. Even though the things they wrote in the shell part remained the same, they added a lot more things in the snail part, which included some of the strategies we discussed in the program. So that was our pre-post evaluation questionnaire. And again, my reflection has been that if you do something quite culturally appropriate, you can sort of adapt some of the existing resources and still support pain management in the most vulnerable communities. So that was lesson 1. This is lesson sort of learning 2, or experience number 2, was again, taking that sort of arts-based approach and integrating that in the sort of the mainstream or the hospital-based group pain management program where I currently work. Again, this is something that it's not new. I was again inspired from some of the existing research that's been already done, where we introduced some drawings as part of the group pain management program. So Diane Hinere is an occupational therapist from New Zealand, so she's already done this before. And Isabel Anisa, I think she's a psychology background from the UK, so I saw a thesis of hers, and that was the inspiration, really. So what I did was, in the first of the 12 weeks, I asked the patients to, if you have to draw yourself, where are you now in relation to your pain? And I clearly explained, like, this is not a drawing competition. It's not a test of your artistic ability. We are more interested in the story that comes from your drawing. So here's an example that in the first session, this is what someone drew, the burden of being in pain. And again, this is in the last week, the 12th week. We did the same exercise, and as you can see the person, the smile, the things that are happening in their life, and there are people in the person's life. Again, this is another example, very similar, a life sort of dominated by pain. And then this is the last session. As you can see, there's a lot of sunlight, there's nature, there's flowers. Actually, those two flowers are the patient's son and daughter, really. So that shows her value and the passion that she has in life and things she wanted to do. And again, the reflection has been, if we had asked them what were their experiences, I don't know whether we would have created this richness in the narrative, and we wouldn't have known that the things that they're passionate about and a bit of their insight into their lives, really. And this is actually self-discovery, which I talked about early on in that review. And it's a really good self-reflective exercise for them to see in terms of their change in relationship with pain. So that, and one of the final sort of example that I want to share was the pacing, as we are practicing pacing during this conference. There was one of the sessions that I was asked to sort of facilitate is a pacing session. And that's when and we all know, like, pacing is we all would have seen this sort of graphs, the impact of pain and movement and activity patterns, cycles of overactivity, underactivity, and how we should pace. But I know, like, pacing is quite a multidimensional construct. And as you'd have figured out, I'm a big fan of illustrations and arts. So I've worked with an artist to again, with inputs from clinicians and lived experience experts about how can we sort of communicate this complex concept into other than this linear model. Or in addition to that linear model, I would say. So Sarah came with these sort of 3 ideas. So this is like a weaving sort of example. Again, different threads for different people, and pacing looks differently. And she says, like, involves attending to those loose threads or reworking those areas that requires more focus. And this was another example of the pathway. And again, it shows someone very hesitant to engage in things that they are passionate about. But then once they start to go, again, how you can sort of chunk it, prioritize it, schedule it. You don't have to do it alone. You can have the support of PITs or other people, and the confidence grows as well as you go along. So this is the sort of the final example she came up with. Again, lots of other things here. The burden of being in pain, and then once people start to do things, engage in things that they value and they're passionate about, and the fern sort of represents their confidence, and the bird sort of represents their relationship with pain, and yeah, so again, it's trying to sort of communicate those ideas, and again, different people resonate to these images quite differently. Yeah, again, sticking with that sort of pacing sort of session, I was teaching postgrad students. We basically use a lot of cases and use that as exemplars for teaching. And I thought, why can't we try that with our group program patients? And so I came up with these sort of 3 imaginary scenarios. Again, a Maori woman, Rangi, and she wants to go to this community meeting, but she has pain, and she's worried about how she's gonna cope with sitting. So again, we divvied them into groups, and we asked people to think about how can they help Rangi and what some of the strategies they could give her. And again, this was Paul. He's a painter. He's going back to work after a long time. worried about is, how can he sort of do this 8 hours of work? Again, very similar sort of questions. Again, this is Nazria. She's a refugee woman from Syria. She loves gardening and she has her own way of doing things, but she ends up with flare-ups. So how can she do things differently, and how can we help her manage flare-ups? So when people did their individual discussions as a group, and they all put it on, we collected all their feedback in a whiteboard. And as you can see, this is what I really want them to sort of take away from the session, and it all came from themselves. And the beauty of this was, one of the patients in the next week when she came back, we actually reflect on how their week was and what they did differently. And she said actually she was doing a chore at home and she was experiencing pain, and she said, okay, if it was my friend, what advice would I give to her? And she said, maybe I will take a little pause. Maybe I'll tell her to take a break. And she said, and then she took a break. So when I heard that sort of reflection, I was so grateful for her to share that. And she was saying how it's easy to give advice for others, but putting that in practice to us was quite a challenge, but she eventually did it. So again, like I enjoyed sort of learning with and from experts of lived experience. Yeah, so I'm still learning. I'm not an experienced clinician anyway, but I'm learning every day, every moment. So yeah, I think my final thoughts are definitely think about the people who you don't see in the clinic or who you don't read in your research paper. And different people learn differently, and being in pain makes it challenging. And again, learning happens both ways. It's not only the patients who learn from clinicians, but yeah, clinicians learn a lot from lived experience experts. And creating a safe space using these some of the creative approaches make it a bit more, enjoyable, I don't know, but yeah, make it a bit less challenging for sure. Yeah, so I'd really like to finish off with this whakatoki, the Maori proverb, e haru takutawa I titoa, takitahi ingerihi toa takimano. So my strength is not an individual, it is a collective strength. And that's the academic team on the left and the clinical team on the right. And without their support, yeah, none of these would have happened. So very grateful for their support. I know I'm over time, but wait, there's more. I mean, again, as you can see, there's definitely a long way to go. So, but there are definitely these ideas in the pipeline in terms of integrating, making this group program more valuable and meaningful for everyone. Kia ora.
Thanks, Anne. Well done. I enjoyed that.
That was amazing. So Grania, any questions for Dr. Devan before we jump into all sorts of things I need to talk to him about and don't have enough time?
No questions on the chat, but as always, I do have questions, and I'm loving getting the chance to ask them. With regards to the group that you were running in the community for the Maori community, did family members come to all of those sessions? Were they allowed to come? Did they come as a collective to all of the sessions?
Yeah, very good question, Grain. Like, so that again, my Maori community partner said, hey, we give them the choice of having their whānau. Whānau could be their family member. They could also be a community worker.
Yeah.
So anyone who has their trust becomes a whānau member, and it is the person who decides. And we asked them, but no one brought any whānau. So it's again having those choices and let them make a choice as opposed to we deciding who comes in and who's not. So that is, yeah.
And that's the powerful thing, isn't it? Is them getting the choice to do it or not. Quite often here in the UK, we a pain management program that I ran or was involved with for many years, we had a session where we invited people to bring along friends, family members, anybody that was important to them, but it was only ever one of the sessions. And we tried in another service to get education sessions up and running where we would again invite people to bring somebody along, and it was always a real mixture of whether or not they came or not. And then another question was, during the program where you use the case examples, which is just brilliant, a lovely way of really getting people involved. I wondered at what week during your 12-week program do you introduce that? Because presumably week 1, they probably don't necessarily.
Yeah. It was
Is it
week
quite near the
6,
end?
week 6
Yeah.
of the 12, because the first 5 weeks are a bit more sort of education-y, sort of like sensory nervous system, stress response, thoughts and feelings, pain memories, and then comes the taking charge session, where's the like now what, like that it's more the how, and that's when I thought, like, I mean, it's interesting, like, we usually co-facilitate with another clinician, and there was this amazing discussions that they have had, and there was the debrief. Me, it's like, oh, have we given our key messages or not? And for me, the whiteboard was the key message. Yeah, it's interesting, like how, because I want the key messages to come from the participants or patients themselves, rather than, because yeah, so again, it's a different people look at things differently. So but I was so grateful for patients who they took part with great enthusiasm, and they've contributed amazingly well.
Yeah, no, it's that kind of co-production, that co-facilitation, getting them really involved, as opposed to just we're educating you and we're giving you information. It definitely makes it more powerful. And the more successful programs I've been involved with and seen over the years have been those that have that element of that kind of co-production, and also fun. And lots of people are commenting about, we're all loving the images and the beautiful artwork by your illustrator. And are those images that can be accessed and shared and used? You know, are they available anywhere? Or, you know, because some of them are really powerful images, you know.
Yes, Rain. I think depending on which one, because they are yeah, I'm trying to write up a paper on this, so it will and then it comes with a sort of a public website that people can actually access, and we really want to acknowledge the illustrators as part with the art. So yeah, that is something. So we are working on it in terms of wider dissemination. But yeah, thank you for the lovely comments, and again, it's like all the credit goes to the illustrators. So I was lucky to sort of get connected with them, and yeah, because that part of my brain is not there. So
but it shows the power of it, doesn't it? I mean, I think we've all really responded to those images. So that kind of visual imagery is so important to get. And it can often be more universal in any language, you know, and more immediate for people in any language. So yeah, I'll hand over to Keith now. I've done my questions. I've had my time.
I've got a couple of things I just want to, and again, more comments, Hem. That was amazing. What I loved, your work, a couple of things. First of all, your focus on, you know, collaborating, and more so, even more clear. I can't think of the right word, but just really that integration of you know, that lived experience expertise. And we're going to close out this conference with a dear friend of ours who is a lived experience expertise, and Mary's going to really wrap around all of this and why we're here. So it'll be beautiful to get into that. But what I loved was your example with the Maori people and them saying, "Come to us," you know, instead of healthcare being, you know, a one-way street, they were like, you can do it in the hospital, why can't you do it at us? And respecting and honoring their traditions and their systems. And I just love that, and their philosophies and beliefs of the collective, right? I think so often we look at healthcare as pain is like, as the individual, we're going to help you, but people are not isolated, you know. We talk about the biopsychosocial model, and it gets all chopped up and ripped apart, and unfortunately has lost some of its intention from Engels and Romano. But you know, that sort of collective and bringing it to them and having their families involved really speaks to something that and this speaks to my bias and why I reached out to Peter Stilwell many years ago, this idea of an activism, which is people are part of their environment, and their environment is impactful on them. So you can't take people out of their lives, set them off to the side and say, we're going to help you. You need to meet them where they are. And I just loved that. And it looks like it, I mean, the art and the imagery showed the power of that and the transition from the painful images to, images of a life full. It was amazing. I just loved it.
Thanks, Keith. Can I just add on just a bit of a footnote from me? The fact that where you went into the Maori community, and when I worked on the expert patients program here in the UK, all the programs that we ran, the remit wasn't, they couldn't be run on hospital sites, etc., because it was a community program, and so we were running the programs in the person's community. So we was looking for non medical centres, etc., like, so there was in community halls, etc., and stuff. And what you demonstrated there as well, where people were solving their problems within themselves rather than, with healthcare professionals are so used to sort of, coming up with all the answers, is where, in support with self-management is where people within the group, within the program, are solving their own problems, like from my experience over the years, is that the solutions they come up with are just really simple, like, non-medical, very simple, and people, they take it on board and do it, So thanks for that,
Yeah.
Em. And hey, Keith, should we start saving up our money? And I want to go out there and check out what they're doing over there, dude.
I think we need to go. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fasten your seatbelts, Pete and Keith, when you land.
Yeah, apparently.
The amount of wind we've had here at the moment, mate. It's a good job I don't wear my hat too much, like,
There you go. There you go. So
Thanks
that
very
was
much,
awesome,
Em.
Em. Thank you. Yeah.
Great stuff. And,
Thanks, Keith and Pete. Thank
yeah,
you.
good stuff,
Thank
mate.
you.
Keep doing what you're doing, dude. Love it. And we'll have a little 2-minute break, and next speaker is
I see a hand up from Peter.
Hang on.
Mr. Stilwell, do you have a question, comment?
That was just me clapping.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll take
Appreciate
that.
the presentation as always. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, we'll grab our 2-minute break, and then we'll have Katherine up next.
Okay.
And
Thanks very much.
go on for the ride. Okay,
Nice.
thanks again, Ham. That was awesome.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm keen to head over to New Zealand too. Now that I've
hello,
listened to that.
Katherine, how you doing? How you
Yeah,
doing?
good.
You all right? Good to see you again, baby.
Yeah, you too.
And thanks for coming on and doing the presentation about food and pain, etc. Like, it's not. I don't hear it shared enough, so it was important to get you on board.
Yeah, thank you. I'm keen to get it out in the as many places as I can. Let's put it that way.
Right, we've got a platform here, babes. Can you make me feel really bad and tell me what the weather's like over there?
It's actually pretty windy and rainy today.
Oh, great. In actual fact, here at the moment, it feels, well, I just looked at the phone earlier on, it's 10 degrees and it's in the night time, or the early hours, 4:21 at the moment. And here's the weather forecast from Essex in the UK, and it is, 9 degrees. And for this time of year, it's crazy, that's Mankini weather nearly.
It's definitely that we've had a lot of rain though the last couple of days.
Yeah.
A lot of rain.
Yeah.
I've started growing skin between my toes, like, is that so much rain?
It's actually nice because we've had a lot of 35 to 40 degree days. So
Scorchio, love it. Katherine, have you got some slides to show at all?
I sure do. Let me.
I'll give you an intro. Are we good to go, Keith?
We're born good to go, brother.
Okay,
Yeah,
go. Let's go. So let me introduce Katherine Brain. Now, I've met Katherine not in person, by the way, but I met her in. I don't know where we met, Katherine, but I think I contacted you about something. I can't remember, but we ended up doing. We made a couple of videos that are on the Pain Toolkit YouTube channel.
Yeah.
About pain and food, and I think we did one on I think we did an answering question video, and also I think we did one on pain and cancer and food, etc. Like, you know, so
Yeah.
well, that's why you're here today, really, because as we were saying before, so before, you know, before you start that, I don't know about you, Keith, but I don't see any information out there about the importance of, you know, what to eat if you're living with pain or living with long-term conditions. So, to me,
Yeah.
have you seen any? I don't think I've seen any.
No, I would say it's something that's sorely lacking. So I am super excited to see what you're going to educate us with, Katherine. So yeah, looking forward to this.
So, Katherine,
Thanks.
do you want to go live with your slides or whatever you do, and then tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're working, etc., where you
Yep.
where you hide all your savings.
Where the buried treasure is.
Yeah.
Okay, over to you.
Can you see my slides?
I can
Okay.
see him, yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So yeah, thank you. So I'm based in Australia, in Newcastle, which is near Sydney, and I am a dietitian by trade. I also have lived experience with chronic pain for the last 15 years, and work both as a researcher and as a dietitian at a pain service here in Newcastle and also at the university. So my area of interests are really around bridging that gap between nutrition and pain, and also a lot of consumer advocacy in the research world as well. But today I'm going to focus on nutrition and what, why, how, what, all the questions around how nutrition really helps with pain management and why it's important. So this is, I suppose, the model that I'm most familiar with through my own training and research in terms of pain management and how it brings together that sort of whole person approach. So the biomedical side of things, really looking if there's any structural problems or illnesses. So essentially ruling out any red flags and how medication and surgery may or may not be appropriate depending on the individual. Mind body is the thoughts and emotions associated with pain. Connection really relates to that isolation of that occurs when you're experiencing pain from people, place, and purpose. Physical activity is moving safely and looking at sleep habits, and then nutrition, which is around nourishing the body to help with pain in particular, and also other health conditions that come along with pain as well. And I like to superimpose nutrition onto this model because it relates to every aspect, and you could superimpose any of these over this model and show that nothing really stands alone. It works together as a collective. In terms of nutrition and the biomedical side of things, we're looking at, you know, why is nutrition helpful for pain through that mechanism? What mechanisms are involved. So things like inflammation, oxidative stress. Sorry, just note, is my presentation's not on full screen?
No, it doesn't look like the slideshow has actually started.
Right. Let me try again.
There you go.
Awesome, thanks. So looking at the mechanisms behind pain, so looking really at inflammation and oxidative stress, looking at, you know, thoughts and emotions and pain and how that might impact on eating patterns and behaviors, so things like emotional eating. We also have a real connection and social connection with food as well. So celebrating, you know, special occasions, catching up with friends for a coffee, it really does sort of make up a central point to a lot of our social connections. Physical activity and nutrition can help build strength and help with different sleeping issues. And then again, that sort of direct impact of nutrition on pain and comorbidities. So this is a bit of a busy slide, really to show that it's not a straightforward sort of situation and everyone is different. There's a lot of different aspects that impact on nutrition that impact on pain and vice versa. So there's things like the overlapping chronic conditions, that underlying inflammation. People have different nutrition requirements, often side effects of medication, appetite, food choices, what people actually like to eat, what they don't like to eat. There might be food allergies and intolerances, and some of those practical things around accessing food, ability to shop and cook. And really at the moment, I think for a lot of us, the cost of living and the cost of food, and how do we address all of that in the context of pain. So nutrition matters, and what I really wanted to focus on today is working through some specific areas of nutrition that might be helpful, with some different ideas and tips and strategies that you could take away with you. And feel free to make your own suggestions in the chat. I think, like we were talking about, or what I was listening to in the last presentation, when I talk about this in group settings, it's great to see everyone participate and problem solve their own solutions to eating well with pain management. So there's lots of ideas in the presentation. They may not suit you, but have a think about ones that might suit you, and think about what you might be able to change with your eating patterns. So these are the 5 key aspects that I'll look at. So fruit and veggies, healthy fats, water, whole grains and fiber, and eating good quality protein. So I'll start with fruit and veg. And so before we jump into any information, I've got a bit of a question for you, just to think about: how many colors of fruit and vegetables do you typically eat in a day? So I'll just give you a couple of seconds. Feel free to jot it down, or you can share in the chat, up to you. Yep, we've got a 3, 4, great. 5, yep. So often you hear the message in Australia, our guidelines are eat 2 pieces of fruit and 5 serves of vegetables a day. But when it comes to pain management, it's really around the colors that you're having. So the colors in fruit and vegetables are really important at helping to reduce that inflammation and oxidative stress. So trying to aim for 3 or more colors a day in your fruit and veggies. So why are fruit and veggies important? They provide us with vitamins and minerals. As I said, they've helped fight inflammation. And those colours that come in the different fruit and veggies contain a compound called antioxidants. And it's not something that our body absolutely needs. We would still function if we didn't have antioxidants in our diet, but we wouldn't function very effectively. So we are more effective, and our bodies work better if we have these antioxidants and bright colours in our food. Not Smarties and M&Ms though, they come from fruit and veggies. So fruit and veggies provide fibre, so helping you keep full at meal times and keeping you regular. And as I said, there's no particular fruit or veggie that's best. It's really around eating a rainbow. But in saying all of that, there's great benefits, and I think the message of fruit and veggies is thrown at us quite a lot. It can be tricky to eat enough fruit and veggies, especially when you're experiencing pain. So what I'd suggest is small steps and build up over time. It all adds up. So this is where I encourage you to think about some of your own ideas of how to increase fruit and veggies. Some suggestions that I've got here are frozen fruit and veggies. They help save money. They help save waste. So you don't, at the end of the week, have a look in your veggie crisper and find that moldy carrot that you forgot about. They also give you lots of colour, because you can often buy them in a mixed variety, and it saves you standing in the kitchen to chop up lots of fruits and veggies. Similarly with tinned or canned fruits and veggies. Salad kits and pre-prepared veggie options at the supermarket. Thinking about when you're feeling well or have less pain, prepare fruit and veggies then. And even if, for example, if you go shopping and you buy, I know if I buy any sort of watermelon or rock melon, if I just throw it in the fridge or leave it out, I'm really unlikely to eat it. So I try and cut it up when I get home so that it's easy to grab on the go. And legumes count as well. They're a great option that you can throw into lots of meals, and they actually fit into quite a lot of the different food categories that I'll talk about today. So just a bit of a reflection, have a think about what ways you might be able to increase your fruit and veggies. Maybe it's adding a different vegetable to your trolley in your next shop, or having, if you may not have a variety of colors, adding an extra color to your fruit and veggies, or trying some of these options to make it a little bit easier to eat. The next one I wanted to talk about is healthy fats. So again, a little bit of a self-assessment sort of tool is, do you include healthy fats every day? So things like avocado, oil, olive oil, nuts and seeds, and oily fish. So aiming to include small amounts every day. And we want to do this to help fight inflammation, boost mood, good for your heart health, and it also is important for our skin, eyes, and brain health as well. So again, some easy strategies and tips are things like swapping cooking oil for olive oil, swapping processed meats for tuna or salmon, having a handful of nuts, trying avocado on toast or in a sandwich, and including fish 1 to 3 times a week, whether that's fresh, frozen, or tinned, it doesn't really matter. So again, have a think about if there's anything you can do to help improve the healthy fats that you're having. The next one is water. So thinking about the drinks that you usually have, are you having mostly water, unsweetened tea, or sugar-free drinks? These are the ones that we're aiming for to prevent dehydration. So when we're dehydrated, our pain experiences can actually be worse. And water has a lot of other benefits, so satisfying thirst, doesn't have any energy in it, it's often very free or cheap and easy to get. And other drinks might have sugar or caffeine in them, which is not helpful for pain, and it's also not helpful for sleeping and mood as well, which all sort of connects back into that, that diagram that I showed you at the start. So again, some different ideas and tips, keeping a water bottle with you, asking for table water at a restaurant, adding some different flavor, or you could also get a mineral water with the fizziness sort of texture to it, having alternate drinks. So if you're having tea or coffee during the day, trying to have water then tea, for example. Mixing half and half, so water and fruit juice, and using smaller glasses for sugary drinks. And again, these are just suggestions. You might have your own ideas as you work through this, so have a think about what you might be able to do to drink more water. The next one's whole grains and fiber. So thinking about the sorts of whole grain foods that you have, breads, pastas, rice, and cereal. Do you include mostly whole grain or wholemeal options? This is really important to provide our bodies with sustained energy. It also helps our digestive and heart health, really good for our gut bugs as well. So when our gut bugs are really happy and healthy, the rest of our body is also happier and healthier as well. And it provides energy to all our cells to help them function. So some easy ideas, again, are swapping things. You'll notice there's a bit of a trend across a lot of these suggestions is swapping. So swapping white bread, pasta or rice for wholemeal or whole grain. Not peeling your fruit and veg, including legumes, having whole grains and things like that. And unflavored popcorn is a great snack as well. So again, have a think about what you might be able to change. And you don't necessarily have to change something in every one of these categories. As I said, it's small steps and it builds up over time. Then we've got quality protein. So a couple of the questions here is, do I include lean quality protein every day? So this might include lean meat, chicken, eggs, and there's also vegetarian options. And do you have fish or seafood every week as well? So quality proteins help to keep us full when we eat. They help our muscles and bodies in terms of strength building and growth, repair, and function. It also helps our immune system. So having some protein in most meals and snacks during the day, spreading it out is really helpful rather than having a large meal with a big portion of protein during the day, trying to spread it out. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to eat meat. There's options like yogurt, milk, cheese, eggs, peanut butter on toast, legumes, and other vegetarian options. So some ideas: snacking on nuts and seeds, yogurt, cheese, hummus and crackers, adding legumes to dishes like spaghetti bolognese and stews. So this is a great option. And again, you see a bit of overlap here with some of the other suggestions around fruit and veggies. So you're kind of getting bang for your buck if you include legumes. That sort of ticks off your vegetables and ticks off your protein, but it also makes the dish last longer and saves money too. Adding nuts and seeds to different meals, having boiled eggs as a snack or adding to salads, trying to include some protein at breakfast time, and swapping processed meats for lean meats. So again, have a think about what you might be able to change here as well. And in terms of wrapping up, I just wanted to sort of bring this all together and show you how it sort of works in this diagram. So we've got a plate in the middle here, which half of it is fruit and vegetables and trying to have a rainbow of colours. We've got a quarter of the plate here of good quality protein and a quarter of the plate of good quality carbohydrates. And then in the middle here is some healthy fats, although I have been told it looks like a wine flask. So take that as you will and drink mostly water. And just to finish up, which I'm happy to share these as well, just some resources and questions and time for questions, sorry, as well. These two websites are Australian based, but they do have some great recipes as well. So No Money, No Time is a website that has recipes for people with no money and no time, as the name suggests, and also has some different hacks and myths. And then the Healthy Food Guide is similar as well. And you can adapt to different countries and different food products that might be available where you live as well. So that was everything I wanted to cover. If there's any questions.
I think Grania has a list of them there.
I can see them popping up.
I had to write them down this time because they were quite long questions and I didn't want to forget any of it. But yeah, so I mean, that's really tapped into something that I think is really underrepresented in pain management, certainly in the UK. I obviously can't speak for the rest of the world, but I think nutrition and food is really underrepresented. Probably about nearly 20 years ago, we were talking about it a little bit in our program, but not necessarily from a position of expertise, because we were physios and OTs and nurses, but we felt that there was something in it, but we maybe didn't know exactly what. So, but the questions really were, the first of all is, there's lots of controversy around putting fruit and veg into smoothies and whether or not the blending of them breaks them down and means that you're not getting the nutritional value out of it. But equally, it can be a really good way for people to get veg that they might not eat in. What are your thoughts on smoothies and where they fit into it?
Yeah, I think smoothies are a great option. I wouldn't be relying on them 3 meals a day. And I'd certainly prioritize smoothies over like a juice. So if you're juicing things, that does lose a lot of nutrients. But if you're combining it into a smoothie, that's actually, it keeps all the nutrients in there. And you can throw things in and hide lots of things. Like even with my 2-year-old niece making a smoothie and throwing in spinach, for example, we hide a lot of vegetables and a lot of things for her. So it's a great way to include lots of different things if you're not feeling like eating as well. So it's certainly one thing to help. I wouldn't rely on them though as your only source of nutrition.
Yeah. And making them, I particularly, I like mine green. I don't like them very sweet, so I don't ever make smoothies with yogurt or honey or bananas and stuff like that in it, because I kind of like them almost not sweet, but that's an acquired taste, I guess. The other thing was around, there was a mention in one of the slides around, do people have sugar-free drinks? And obviously there's huge controversy also about sugar-free, because that is often artificial sweeteners. And I know personal experience with that is that artificial sweeteners really don't agree with me. And, you know, I tend to drink unsweetened drinks, but a little bit of sugar, naturally occurring sugar, is that probably, what are your feelings on whether that's, you know, better than the no calories of artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, I think both sugar and sugar sweetened and artificially sweetened drinks, neither of them have good qualities about them. I think it's really around predominantly drinking water as your main source of hydration. But for some people who might be drinking lots of sugary drinks, and again, it's that small step. So it might be one step to going from sugar sweetened drinks to water, as maybe introducing some of those artificially sweetened drinks in the meantime, as a way of sort of weaning off those sweetened drinks and onto water. Artificially sweetened drinks can, they still impact on our dental health. They can still impact on our bone health, and it's still, our bodies still look for that sort of sugary flavor and craving as well. So they're not a great option, but they can be helpful for some people in transitioning from high amounts of like, say, soft drink, for example, through to water. But if you're having very small amounts of, you know, sugar sweetened drinks, then that's okay. It's that message about mostly water is what we're aiming for. Yeah.
And then about sort of, obviously gut microbiome is the new buzzword, isn't it? Around the world, the Zoe study and various other things, all, you know, have brought it to the fore, which is really good, because presumably nutritionists have really known about gut microbiome for a long time, and the rest of us are sort of catching up with it. I wondered, is there any actual papers out there around the gut microbiome being affected specifically by chronic pain conditions, or is there any evidence around pain medication having effect on the gut microbiome? I mean, and Dave put on there, he doesn't know about the biome, but that meds definitely affect his stomach. So we do know that pain medications can definitely affect people's stomach and gut function. But I just wondered whether there was any actual research had gone on there in terms of that.
Yeah, and I think even though this is a really exciting and emerging space, there's still a lot we need to learn about the microbiome. Essentially, in our gut, it's a bit like real estate. So it's prime real estate for all the bacteria. So we're wanting to make sure we're getting good bacteria into that real estate rather than the bad bacteria, so to speak. But we're also aiming for variety of bacteria too. So things like, you know, probiotics get thrown around quite a lot. So taking a probiotic is good to make sure that real estate is taken up with good bugs, but their variety is quite limited. So what the best thing to do would be to try and feed the gut bugs that we have, so that we can keep them happy and healthy and keep that variety going. So things like your fibrous foods and a lot of carbohydrate foods that ferment in the gut. So things like legumes, apples, pears, all the different veggies, those sorts of things can be really helpful. There is some research around chronic pain and the gut microbiome, that there are some relationships there, similar to there's research around how the gut microbiome and respiratory health and depression and all sorts of other chronic diseases are linked together, but exactly what that looks like and what that means is a little bit hard to tease out at this stage. So it's a bit of a watch this space, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, and if I have time, there are a couple more quick questions. You can tell this is a topic very close to my heart. The other thing is that you've got this, you talk about the importance of protein and getting it from lots of different sources, and that most people can get it naturally from food. And obviously the other thing you see people doing now, and especially probably younger people, is these high protein bars and protein powder and all of these kind of really ultra processed sort of protein things, and that they worry me, and I just don't know whether, you know, is it a, you know, is it a big problem, or are they? Is it a good supplement for people to take if they need it?
Unless you're really malnourished, so you're really unwell, you're quite frail, then no, you don't need to take those sorts of things. Or unless you're an extreme, dedicated athlete, no, we don't need those sorts of things. We get, as I said, plenty of protein from food. And even before we get to those sorts of ultra processed supplements, there's other ways we can increase protein in the diet before we get to those supplements. So yeah, they're a bit of a marketing tool more than anything else, and they're quite attractive to some people, particularly young people, as you said, those that go to the gym a lot. That they have a place, but probably they're used more than they need to be.
Yeah. All right. That's just amazing. Thank you. That's been really really good.
Have you got any questions, Keith? You look like
No, but I see Hem had a question in the chat there.
Oh, I
so,
missed that. Sorry.
I'll just read it out here. So he said, as a clinician researcher working in this space, can you point him to some contemporary evidence for nutrition and pain management?
Yes, it's probably easier if I copy and paste some things into the chat, Hem, or I can email you. There's a few journal articles out there, and the International Association for the Study of Pain has a fact sheet that I've worked on, and I've done a webinar for Chronic Pain Australia, which is on their website too for consumers. So happy to share those resources with you if you like.
Good, that'd be brilliant if you could put them in
That's
the chat.
awesome,
That'd be
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
okay, well,
Oh,
thank you,
awesome.
Catherine.
Thanks. No worries.
Yeah,
Good
thank you.
stuff,
It was
as
very
usual.
interesting.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time, giving up your time, etc. Thanks very much. And last but not least, where's Mary? Oh, we've got to have
She's
a
there.
pacing break. We've got a pacing
Yeah,
break.
we're
Sorry
going to
about that.
take 2 minutes, and then Mary is going to, as I said earlier, she's going to wrap her arms around this whole conference, and she's going to bring in her brilliance and her expertise in living with pain, and she's going to just enlighten us with all the amazing things she knows. And there is her smiling face as we speak. So
We need a bit of enlightenment.
Don't build me up too much.
Oh no, I know where you're going to take us. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes, Mary. I need to get up and stretch this whole body. And we're going to take 2 minutes, and then we're going to come back, and you are going to be the capstone to what has been just a spectacular last few hours. So we'll see you in 2 minutes.
So Mary, whenever you good afternoon. Whenever you're ready, share your slides and get yourself all set up so that you're ready for your spotlight. And I apologise, Catherine, I forgot to put the spotlight on you when you were presenting, so you managed to escape being the big picture, the big face on the screen.
Don't put one on me, please.
As if I'd be that cruel to you, Mary.
Please. Okay, we're right there.
Yep, we are indeed.
Beautiful.
I seem to have a bit of, it's very dry and hot here today, and I'm sort of clearing my throat. I've been sitting here drinking water, trying to load up, thinking, oh, I'm going to have a funny throat the whole way through, you know?
Yeah, we don't do funny throats on a Saturday.
How are you guys going to keeping awake?
Oh,
You sound like Stevie Nicks. So
I've actually done some meetings, haven't I, Keith, with IASP at 3 o'clock in the morning, so I know what it feels like.
I feel proper energized, and yeah, it doesn't feel like this time in the morning for me. It feels
No, what I used to do was I used to say, look, I'm coming, but if I wake up and I make coffee and I have that and I feel terrible, then I'll be an apology. But it never happened, so there wasn't that many. There hasn't been that many at that hour, but it did happen, and I just didn't. I thought, well, you know, someone has to be the one who gets up in the night, so I'll do it. And I just sit there and have a cup of coffee and throw something on over my PJs. Shouldn't tell a secret, should I?
No, I don't know what you wear.
when we put this on, poor Pete and Dave and now Grania, they sit right in the middle of the world, basically. So they get stuck with the middle of the night. And then we try and parse everybody out to the east and the west and make it all work.
It's almost impossible. It's really difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the world's a big place. There's lots of time zones.
Yeah.
Somebody should make less.
It's really hard. It's not.
In a way, we
not easy.
tired. I know we had a nap. I think we all three of us. We didn't just all sleep together, but we all had.
Hey, you do you, man. You do you. So.
But we had a little bit of a nap early evening, I guess. But you know, when I don't know about you on your day, but when we're doing this stuff, I get energized. You know, I feel you know, I find it interesting.
Did you see Granya's questions? She was on fire.
Yeah,
I just,
about 40 minutes, I think I'll crash.
But we have that when we get together, though, Pete, don't we? We always come away from any meetings where we catch up together. We always come out really buzzing, because when you're talking to like-minded people, even though there's an element of sometimes on these things we end up preaching to the choir, because who we get here are people who all are like-minded, but talking to like-minded people makes you feel in the same way that it does, I guess, for people attending pain management programs and groups, you feel not alone. You think, I'm not the only clinician that thinks like this. I'm not the only clinician that wants to do better and wants to be better. And then it just is exciting to hear from other clinicians all around the world. And that's the amazing stuff about it, is hearing what people are doing in different countries. We can get very stuck in our own little corner of the universe, can't we? So, yeah.
Okay then, let's as I say, last but not least, our very good friend Mary Wing from down here in Adelaide. I just want to give you a bit of a preamble here, Mary, because I think I don't know if for those watching or listening to the conference, Mary has become I think a good friend, a very good friend in the pain toolkit. But Mary's been doing amazing work down there in Adelaide, and where she runs support groups for people living with persistent pain. She's been doing it for some time now, and you know, for me, she gets a lot of respect from me, because I've done that stuff in the past, running groups, etc. Like, you know, and it can be draining, but it also can be rewarding. But I just want to say thank you, Mary, for all the work that you do. Like, you know, because I know you do. We all do it with love, really. We don't of us get any recompense for it, etc. Like, you know, Keith, do you want to give do a bit of a preamble for Mary before she sets off?
Yeah, just a little bit, and then Mary, you can fill in any blanks you want. But I've had the good fortune of being able to meet Mary in person when we were in Amsterdam. So it was nice to meet somebody from literally the other side of the world. So I will never forget that, Mary. So and I have a real connection with Mary, because we both live with neuropathic pain, so we can understand sort of. I mean, all pain sucks, but neuropathic pain is just it's just this weird thing. So we have more of a connection there. But Mary is just relentless in what she does. She holds a postgrad diploma in chronic pain management. As Pete said, she facilitates chronic pain management and self-management programs. She's a member of and I didn't realize this. This is really cool. She's a member of the Commission on Excellence in Health, Chronic Pain Statewide Clinical Network Steering Committee in South Australia. Not 100% sure what that is, but it sounds pretty friggin' awesome. So nicely done.
It is.
Okay. She's a patient representative for hospital pain clinic committees, and she is a founding member of the International Association for the Study of the Pains, Global Alliance of Partners for Pain Advocacy. It's a whole bunch of words, and that's why it's got an acronyms of IASP and GAPA. So with that, Mary, like Pete said, we're honored to have you join us and to be able to wrap up what has been just an incredible last few hours with the knowledge and the expertise that you bring from your experiences. So please take it away.
Thank you, Keith, and thanks to Pete and Keith for running the conference and for inviting me to talk to you today. What I would like to talk about, I'll give you a bit about my journey, as we call it, about things that I wish I'd known both after surgery and before surgery. I think those things would have helped me a lot. It would have given me much better understanding and saved a lot of angst and all the rest of it. But first of all, my slide isn't moving on. Okay. I'd just like to mention about the social impact of chronic pain. It's something we see so much. It's associated with withdrawal from social activity. And we see this in our groups a lot. People become more and more isolated. And I've been through this myself back in 2006, where you just don't realise anything except pain. That seems to be your whole world. And all sorts of weird things happen, like you won't go into a shop unless you can park in front of it. And I don't know why that is. It's fear, obviously, but all of those consequences make you feel guilty. You think, well, you know, it's my fault. If I'd done this, I'd be better. Or maybe if I'd done what that person said, then I wouldn't be like this. And then all of that cascades into something which makes it really hard to be able to access and take part in things that will help you to self-manage that pain a lot better. I wish that I'd known that backs are strong, robust structures and that they don't just fall apart. But at the time, my then physiotherapist told me that I needed these tight abdominal muscles to support my back. Now, what I was supposed to do was contract my abdominal muscles periodically through the day until eventually I could do it all day. I'm sure this would take quite some time to achieve. And then I'd have this really tight tummy and my back would be a lot better. I did try. I tried very hard, but sorry. But we know that backs are strong, and there is no evidence that back pain's caused by a weak core. So it's lovely to have a nice tight abdomen. I wish I had one, but it won't make your back any better. And changes related to age are normal. I was told by one rather eminent person that I needed immediate, urgent cervical spine surgery. Now, I had no pain in my neck, but of course that made me too scared to move my neck. And so fortunately, my GP had a friend who was a neurosurgeon, so it didn't take me long to get seen. And he just said, no, you don't need any surgery, but you do need pain management. So there's a big difference in there. And the other one was posture. There are a lot more too, but I've just picked the two main ones. I think that when you're sitting at a screen, you're supposed to have a very, very straight back, and your knees have to be at right angles to your hips and your ankles have to be at right angles to your knees. And I do believe the screen is supposed to be a couple of degrees below your line of vision. Now, I defy you to sit like that for half to 3/4 of an hour if you have no pain, and I guarantee that you will have at the end of it. We're made to move. Bodies are made to move. We're not meant to sit there like tin robots. But when I couldn't do these things, I thought that I was a total failure and that maybe my pain was caused by me being, you know, not good enough to be able to help myself. And words come into this so much, and there are some references at the bottom of here which you probably can't see because of the closed captions, but the power of words is horrific. You think about these expressions: bone on bone, slip disc, disc prolapse. You've got the back of an 80-year-old. We had a man who's 45 years old in one of our groups told this about 18 months ago, and he was too frightened to move because he thought he might break something. These things are terrifying, and this one's the most terrifying of all, and it's still being said to people in this day and age: you will end up in a wheelchair. We also had a lady in a group who was walking. She had some back issues, yes, but she was okay, and she was about 60, I guess, and she was frightened that when she retired she wouldn't be able to afford the wheelchair, so she bought it. So there it sits in her house as a constant reminder that one day she'll need it. She may not. There are other ways that this kind of information can be presented. Like, we're looking at normal changes for your age group. Someone said that to me when I had a foot ultrasound a couple of years ago, and I just about clapped. I was so excited. And I love David Butler's wrinkles on the inside. Now, you know, if we're going to change every decade on the outside, we can't really expect to have an inside that looks the same as we did when we were 25. And someone gave another good example of this when I was in a meeting the other day, and they said, you know, that they had some grey hair. And they said, you know, because I've got some grey hair, does that mean I've got a hair disorder? No. And backs are robust and discs can't slip and go anywhere. And if they're damaged, they will repair in time. And most episodes of back pain will resolve in a few weeks. Now you can see those last 4 statements and other examples like that are calming, they're reassuring, and I think they offer hope that you can work together with a health professional to come to what is best for you for your pain management. I absolutely love this message from your spine. I really love movement. My discs don't just slip out of place. I'm stronger than a weak core, and any position's okay, but not for too long. And this goes for all pain, not just for back pain. If you're having a bad day or a flare-up, it's fine to get a lot of cushions and pillows and a book or a movie, whatever makes you comfortable, as long as you don't stay in one position too long. Move around, say, every 40, 45 minutes. I'll be there in a minute. I've lost the whole thing. My slides won't move without a mouse, and for some reason, so sorry, there we go. I'd like to have known that injections are not a cure too. Now, I know a lot of people get relief from steroid injections for a long time, but it doesn't cure anything. And I was told if I had, by then, my then physiotherapist again, if I had these 3 facet joint injections each side twice a year, I'd be fine. And something made me hesitate to have them. I'm not sure what it was. I used to have 2 or 3 flare-ups a year of back pain. And in that time, I'd go to my physiotherapist a couple of times. I'd take some anti-inflammatories for 2 weeks. And then after that, I'd be pretty much back to normal for me. Now, I should put that in context. Normal for me was that we lived in the Adelaide Hills at the time. My mother lived downstairs and we lived upstairs. And in the winter, I'd take the wheelbarrow out to the wood shed, put as much wood as I could load up in it, push it up a very steep driveway along the front veranda in the front door, fill up my mother's wood box, and then I'd make 3 or 4 trips upstairs with lots of heavy logs and do ours. So I was pretty fit and healthy. And I really hesitated to have these injections, and I don't know why. Eventually, I had a very bad flare-up and I was labelled basically non-compliant and got told off good and proper because I hadn't gone and had the facet joint injections. So I ended up seeing an orthopaedic surgeon. The day I went there, I got out of the car and thought, I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel fine. And he wasn't sure what to do with me either because he thought I was okay. And I said, look, if I don't have these facet joint injections, I'm going to be in big trouble. So I think in the end he thought, well, we've got nothing to lose, and did them. Well, I actually got worse. And it changed. My pain changed into something totally different. It was more of a nervy type pain. It was more widespread. It was there all day, every day, not 3 times a year. And I spent the next year running around from different physiotherapists to different pain specialists to all sorts of people that I won't go into. And then I ended up at a neurosurgeon's office where I had more injections and ended up worse again. And that was my journey into a spinal fusion at L5-S1 and a Wallace stabilisation implant at L4-5. And I've never met anyone since who knows what that one is, but it's still there. So I'd like to know that pain doesn't always equal damage. If you're having a flare-up, it doesn't mean anything's damaged, but I felt as soon as something hurt that I damaged something. What did I do yesterday? What did I do wrong? But that's not the case. It's just simply a flare-up. And if you've got a good setback plan, you can manage that. And bending, especially from waist, that's fine. Some people tell us we can't do that. I was taught all sorts of exotic ways to pick things up off the floor, failure at the whole lot. Learnt to bend from a waist purely by accident after my surgery. I was getting my washing out of the basket with one of those pick-up stick things, driving me nuts. So I was taking some things off the top and then going with the stick. And after a few months, I realised I was halfway down the basket. And I thought, Mary, if you can go that far, you can go the rest of the way. So I gradually started taking a few more things off. And in about another 4 to 6 weeks, I was at the bottom and that stick went in the cupboard where it stays to this day, thank goodness. And gentle exercise is really good, not the 20 of this and the 30 of that I was being told to do. When I eventually found a physiotherapist who said to me, right, now Mary, there's 3 exercises here. You can do 2 of each one every second day. And it worked. Within a few months, I was doing 10 of each one. It didn't stir my nervous system up and I was able to manage that. And I was also able to walk a lot further. But one tiny step at a time, as I said, as tiny as it needs to be for you. And I'd like to have known that stress can make pain worse, but I was in total denial about that. Now, it can be psychological or physical stress that can trigger pain. And it's simply an unhelpful response by an overactive nervous system, particularly with neuropathic pain. I was in denial because I said, well, I've got pain 9 out of 10 every day, and it's still 8 or 9 out of 10 when I'm stressed, so, you know, it can't be causing it. But then I saw a very helpful pain psychologist who taught me relaxation and self-hypnosis. And I started a uni course which gave me distraction for 2 or 3 years. And all that put together started making my pain go up and down during the day. So instead of like I'm getting up at 2 in the morning, 2 out of 10, I should say, and ending up 15 out of 10 in the afternoon, it was up and down. My evenings were more pleasant. And it was then that I realised that, yes, stress does actually increase your pain. And finally, I would love to have known that pain self-management courses existed. I stumbled on a generic Stanford self-management course about 5 minutes from where I live. And I enrolled in that and I just learnt so much. I don't have time to go through that today, but there was so much information given, so much education, and importantly, peer support. Up until then, I thought I was the only person who had this condition. I had no idea how common it was. And I won't ever forget that overwhelming sense of relief that I had when I first walked in there and realised no one was judging me and that everyone just got it. And so we worked together for 6 weeks and we helped each other to learn to manage our pain in the best way for us. That was in 2007. I'm now going to fast forward to 2016. In between times, I had learnt to facilitate those courses myself and run them. And I also ran them online in the USA and Canada for another 4 years. I loved all of it. I only stopped because I got so busy with everything. I just didn't have time anymore. And in 2016, I was asked if I'd volunteer to set up a support group for people who are living with pain by one of our pain clinics. I think they thought that when people leave or were discharged from a pain clinic, they sometimes go back to that same isolation and lack of support that they could do with, and maybe a support group would work well. Now, I knew we couldn't just have a cup of coffee and a chat type of thing, because a lot of those groups turn into pity parties or doctor bashing sessions or who's got the most pain, and it doesn't work. I knew we'd need some sort of input from our end. So I did gather some facilitators together and we had some training, similar to what you would have for training for a 6-week course, but more garnered to what we were going to do. And we started on February in 2017. That's the day that we were born, the Adelaide Pain Support Network. We went better than we could ever have imagined. We quickly outgrew the room they gave us, so they had to send us over to anaesthesia, and we did our meetings among the skeletons and the resus equipment, and it was quite fascinating. And later on, that year, long story short, we received funding from the Adelaide Primary Health Network. And this has been an absolute dream. It's enabled us to train our facilitators, to pay to have our facilitators trained. It's enabled us to do some printing materials and a lot of other things. It enabled us to buy a Zoom license when COVID hit. And it enables us to buy refreshments and not worry about where our next jar of coffee is coming from, and actually get on with what we're there for, which is providing peer support and education to people who need it the most. We gradually expanded into 4 groups. We have one in the west and one in the centre of Adelaide, one in the northeast, and then we started one at the Adelaide University run by 2 younger people for 4 younger people, because we thought that would work well. And it was going well, as was everything else, until COVID hit. And that sort of threw a real spanner in the works, because we were online. We went online and we stayed online for 3 years. We couldn't meet face to face. And last year, we have now got back to going face to face. We've got one group up and running. We lost some facilitators. So we've sort of had to sort of pace ourselves out with that. We want to keep the Zoom meeting going once a month, because it's really good for people who might have to catch 2 buses to get to a face-to-face meeting, or who've missed a face-to-face meeting, or for people from country areas. We have some of those. We've even got a man from Tasmania who's now doing so well that he's going to be a facilitator for us for our online group. And I think that once we get our 2 facilitators who are going overseas back, we will be starting one of the other groups, the Northeast group, up again. So we are getting there. It's just taking a bit of time. I'd just like to play a 50-second video, if that's okay. This young lady was in the United States Navy, and she was abused in all kinds of ways. She was getting support, but she wasn't getting over the hump until she got peer support. And you'll see what she says about that.
Is there a volume, Eric, because we can't hear it?
Yeah, the audio is not coming through.
Sorry. Isn't the audio coming through?
No, there's probably something gone weird with the Zoom settings.
I have used it before and it's worked, so I'll just slip past that then and just say that what happened was that once she got peer support from these people who'd been shot at and she just thought it was wonderful, and they said she was brave for coming forward and saying what had happened to her, and she made enormous strides forward once she got peer support. And it says a lot for peer support, I think. Sorry about that. What we do at the Adelaide Pain Support Network is we provide education and pain management strategies, such as Pete's Pain Toolkit. We refer to that quite a bit. We do problem solving as a group, helping each other. We do goal setting, and we learn how to pace ourselves to achieve the goals. We have health professional guest speakers. We only ever discuss evidence-based material. Our online meetings are open to people anywhere in the world. And we have a policy never to discuss medications or health professionals, because we're not qualified to do that. However, if people want to do that in the coffee break, or when they're home with each other, that's fine. And lastly, my advocacy work, which I just enjoy so much. I'm very busy, but I love all of it. Just a very brief outline of some of the things I'm doing. Yes, I'm on several SA health committees, and one of them is the statewide Clinical Chronic Pain Network, on the Commission in Excellence in Health. The Commission in Excellence in Health has committees of all sorts set up with patient representatives on them for all sorts of different disciplines. You might have one for post-operative care, or for cancer, or for respiratory issues. There's all sorts, and they have a chronic pain one as well. And we've been working for 3 years now on several different things, which we're hoping to get commissioned, particularly a program for low back pain management. I'm on the IASP Global Alliance of Partners in Pain Advocacy, as Keith said, or GAPA. I work with our pain clinics. I'm on the clinical governance committee of one of them, and I help out with the others if they need any help from me. I'm a patient partner in research, and I've been doing this for about 3 years now and absolutely love it. It's fascinating. I've done a couple of research projects with Adelaide University and one with Uni SA. And the last 2 years, I've also been spent a day teaching physiotherapy students in second year at the University of Adelaide. I do a presentation, and a lecturer and I then continue for 2 hours with a workshop. And they're asked what would they do with someone like me, how would they treat me? Because up until then, everything's been pretty straightforward. It's been like a diagnosis of a brain something or other, and then the treatment, and then along comes a complex chronic pain patient, which is a totally different kettle of fish altogether. And I'm absolutely impressed with how engaged they are and how much they get on board with it. And I'm thinking, I think there's hope for the future there, but now we just need to get into the medical school, don't we, and do the same sort of thing. Haven't managed to achieve that yet. And I think that's probably just about enough from me. And thank you so much for listening. And those are my contact details if anyone should want to ask me anything.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions there, Grania? Keith?
Yeah, I don't see any, Grania. I've got the chat open. Is there anything there?
I did put one in there.
Oh, there it is.
got to be a question in there from me. And it is, well, it's basically for you, Mary, but also actually for everybody who is on this meeting or listen to it, who's living with chronic pain. And it's that around, you know, it keeps coming up that people haven't been given this information at the right time. You know, you wish you'd known it, and you're going through that medical model. And I just wondered, there's sort of 2 parts to it. At what point in that journey do you think you should have been given it? You know, is it right at the start or after they've done certain tests? But also, is there a point in your journey where you might not have been open to that, that sort of approach, you know, where you were kind of still yourself, not in the mindset of understanding self-management? I don't know what the answer is. I'm genuinely curious to know what people think.
I think you're right. I think, like people, I was very disappointed in meeting the other day to hear a psychologist say that all of his patients, when they come in, are still looking for the magic bullet, something that will fix them. And I think I was probably very much in that mode. How receptive I would have been, I don't know. But a lot of that stuff I had to find out for myself. A lot of it I found out. I had a very good year in 2007, which was really my sort of enlightening year, as I put it, where I was taught so much, and then I was very receptive. I think what made me more receptive was doing the group course with other people, where you get that peer support and you can see, and everybody's sort of getting it and understanding it and trying it, and it's actually starting to work. So I'm not really sure how receptive nobody really explained anything to me in those first 2 or 3 years, and I think that was probably not a good thing. I would like to think we've improved a bit since then, but I'm not sure that we have after what I heard the other day. So
yeah, I don't know. What about anybody else, Keith or Pete? I'm just interested if you guys have a thought on that as well.
I don't know. I think, well, for me, I mean, mine starts back quite a few years ago, like back in the early 90s, and it has changed as I've been, you know, been around this now. And I had counted up the other day, it's kind of 30 years. I think Keith, you're longer than me, but with engaging with the healthcare community, and I mean, self-management was never discussed from the get-go. It was I call it the NHS roundabout, you know, having tests and pills and whatnot, say the orthopedic surgeon, but no, I can't. I've racked my brain many times. No one mentioned. Well, I think self-management wasn't even a phrase then. I think the one, it was self-care, And but self-management was never mentioned. Physio, I had physio appointments. I had 6, but and saw 6 different people. So that was what it was like, then. I don't know if it's changed now or not. And I always remember I called it the rack, because the physio, poor devils, they had to see 3 or 4 patients at a time. So I'd go in there and they'd stick me on what do you call it, Grania? The stretcher?
Traction.
Traction, yeah, traction machine. So just laid me on there and being pulled, pulled apart, etc. But while she had one and saw someone else, so
So they weren't even really in some ways at that point in time, and I don't look old enough to have been qualified that long, but I am, and I remembered sort of being in that kind of way of working where you almost never got a chance to really build that relationship or really sort of engage with people in that way. I'm aware that there's other questions come through from him, so I want to make sure we get that asked.
Yeah.
There was I've lost it now. There it is. He had a question really about how to make peer support in the community more sustainable. Obviously, you've ended up getting that funding, which is really brilliant. But he was saying he really wished mainstream care acknowledged the power of peer support and integrating that as part of continuity of care. And I can attest to that. In the UK as well, it's even, I think, possibly even worse. There's lots of pain management programs now aren't even doing. We used to do 6 and 12 month follow-up groups, at least, for people to sort of maintain connections after program. They were dropped down to 6, and lots of places don't do any follow-up after the program at all. It's not, which really feels like a backward step, and there's not funding there for people to get that connection.
Yeah, I think that that anything that is done in that way is complementary, that's with an E, to what the health professionals are doing. And I think it's a necessary part of the jigsaw puzzle. I really do. If people can get the peer support along with all the things that they're getting from health professionals, particularly allied health professionals, then I think that they're on a much better, I just think it's a better pathway than if that bit's left out, because it is very isolating. So it's so isolating. And as I said, I didn't even know that other people had what I had. So yeah, and when I found out, it was just a different world altogether. Totally different. Changed my life.
I'm going to come up with a suggestion, because what Hem's suggesting there, I mean, support groups are, I know a lot of healthcare professionals not big fans of them because they just see them as war story groups where people done this stuff and whatnot. What about this for an idea is that myself, well, anybody on here, any healthcare professional or whatever, but we actually set some guidelines up how to start up your own your support group, because I think people would like to do that. As I was talking earlier on about these, when Peter was talking about the peer support group they started up in Nova Scotia there, the talk and walk thing, is that they are useful. And I do come from a support group background where people share about not their problems, but they're sharing their solutions as well, So I think a lot of people would like to do that, but put off because, i.e. the cost. But it's about, if we just set up some simple guidelines, about choosing the right venues, the format, who leads it, and stuff like that. So what topics you talk about. And the thing is, with self-management support groups, it's got to be based around solutions rather than the problems. I know when people get a support group, they're struggling and whatnot, but they need to see some light at the end of the tunnel, because if they join a group and everybody's struggling, well, you're not gonna, you need that light, to head towards, So can we make that as a little bit of an action plan somewhere along the line?
Oh, I reckon that's brilliant. Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea. It's a really good idea. And what Dev was, what he was saying was that they encourage patients after the program to keep connected, and we did that over here as well. And that is the great thing about the more advanced technological age that we're in, with things like patients in the group will often form a group WhatsApp, you know, and then they sort of communicate with each other, often even during the group, and maintain that. But I suppose that's a small thing for that individual group. And I think Pete's idea is really good. If we could come up with some actual guidelines to help healthcare professionals say, you know, this is how your patients could set up peer support groups, it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, young Katherine.
It would be too, because also it's good for patients, because I think that it is like with all pain things, it's hard to get people to actually come. Once they come, they enjoy it, but it's hard to actually get them there, I think, because there are probably a lot of online support groups that are not so good. And some people may have encountered those and they think, oh, support group, what would I want to go to that for? But, you know, at the end of the day, it does work. Our pain clinics send them to us. Whether they come or not is their own choice. A lot don't. But the ones that do, we've still got some people there that were there in 2017. So, you know, it's definitely a definite advantage, and setting up some guidelines would be absolutely fantastic.
Well, thanks for Mary. Oh, excuse me. Thanks for Mary, and thanks for winding up in our last presenter. So to wind things up, I'm going to go around the group really. So, Grania, I mean, do you want to give us some? You know, what's your thoughts on the conference?
Oh, it's been brilliant. It's everything that we, you know, everything that we need to be thinking about more as clinicians, and this kind of environment where you've got people, this kind of proper collaboration and conversation between clinicians and people living with pain is what is missing from so many professional conferences, and that kind of educational environment. If there is anybody, you know, too often they're still seen as very separate things, or if there is any co-presentation, it's still very much on a hierarchical format, or it's an educational thing. It isn't conversational like it is here. So it's absolutely brilliant. I've learned loads again and had lots of lovely reinforcement, which I think is really important for us all as well, to know that we kind of think, yeah, that's what I think, yeah, that's what I do, or I'd like to do that, and that's really a positive thing for us all as clinicians. So it's been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks. And Dave, I know you've been behind the scenes there, taking away as you do, but you're someone like
Thanks, Dave.
Living with persistent pain. What's your take-home messages from the conference?
There's no one solution for everybody. It's finding what works for you and then going with it. And if it doesn't work out first time, try something else.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find something eventually, but you know, don't give up.
Thanks, Dave. And last but not least, my good brother there, Keith, partner in crime, partner in self-management. That's really sort of the self-management brothers. What's your take-home message from today?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank all of our presenters. It was amazing. I appreciate everybody giving their time, because as everybody knows, that nobody gets paid for this. Any of the money that we raise will go to an organization that supports self-management. So for everybody who's presented, it's beautiful and amazing. It's been wonderful. I love these conversations, and I really appreciate the way you really bookended this for us, Mary, because you really brought the person perspective to it. And I just resonated with so much what you talked about, you know, the words matter and all of those things. I believe part of our goal here is to help educate not only people who live with pain, but the clinicians that are there to support them. And we're making very, very slow ticks and movements in that direction. And I remind myself we've come a long way in the last 37.5 years since I've been playing this game, but we've still got a long way to go. So these conversations need to take place. Pete and I talk about, these are kind of the forms we think are the most effective, where they're just conversations. It's not structured and rigid and somebody standing up in front of a room and read my slide and all of that. It's people coming together who are genuine, real, who care, and sharing their experiences and their thoughts. And that's what I felt that came out of this today. It's just authenticity and realism from everybody. So I am just absolutely thankful for everybody who has given their time today. And Pete, I thank you again for coming up with all these crazy ideas and then looping me into it. So
well, Oh, thanks, Keith. And listen, it's all about teamwork. You know, it's just not. You know, I think Jerry Dunham he posted something on Instagram yesterday about collaboration, and that's what pain self-management's about. It's about collaborating. You know, it's about people living with pain, people self-managing their pain, healthcare professionals, etc. You know, you can't. We need to be a collaborate as a team, because that's the only way we're going to get our heads around. It's like, you know, because you know, when I first started off in it, there was only 7.9 million people in the UK living with pain. Now there's 28. You know, well, what's you know what's
Yeah.
I think it's got to be collaboration. You know, we need to you know square the round off the squares or work as a team, etc. You know, but as you said, Keith, thanks very much for everybody who's taken part today, made made it happen, and thanks again personally for Dave, who's my super tech dude, mate. I'll tell you, he's done a super job. He's doing things on the Zoom thing I couldn't do. And thank you, Grania, for doing the chats business, and so all the presenters. But last but not least, my buddy there, my brother there over there in Canada, Keith Meldrum. Keith, you've been awesome, dude, and thanks for putting this all together. And thanks very much for everybody for watching or listening. And we'll see you again next year, next February, on the third one. Take care.
We do it all again. Thanks, everyone.
See you now. Ciao.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.